Hey everybody, this is Carlos Ocelot, and you're watching Dancan's channel. Thorin, my man.
Right, this is going to be the next episode of Daring Minds, the show with me and Gio. This probably needs a better subtitle than that. I can't really be like, that just explains who's on the show. I know, it's got to have something better than that. Like, I've got to come up with something, like, I haven't figured out what it is. It's got to be something like, you know, the talk show that tries to be interesting, but with people that moved to Valorant out of choice or so. I don't know. We've got to have some angle, because I'm trying to think what would make us unique. You know, I don't know what it'd be. Like, it can't just be like, here's the problem. I wasn't abused by Blizzard. That's not why I'm here. You know, I'm not calling out any certain podcasts or anything, you know, but whichever ones might have had people abused by Blizzard who are then also leaving the door open to go back to I've said too much now. Anyway, whatever. Right. So Sliggy's here. It's not in Team Liquid anymore, but he's here. He's the new member of our no, he's obviously not, right? Sliggy, obviously, the big news came out. You're no longer the coach of Team Liquid. You did already, this is how I know in your short time in the coaching game, you have already mastered PR, the interviews, because you did in your statement use all the great euphemisms. You came out and you said, I stepped down due to a difference in vision and direction within the team. Now, what's great about that line is, it sounds like I know what you mean, but actually that doesn't mean anything. So obviously, you can choose how you frame this, how you talk about this. Like, I'll give you an example. Does that mean, to start out with, was there something you were unhappy with about either being a coach? Could be an abstract concept. Was there something about the team specifically didn't work for you? Why are you not coaching Team Liquid at the moment?
Yeah, the tweet was pretty cookie cutter. So I can explain a little bit of it. A lot of it, I'll first explain like our work ethic. Like, I felt like our work ethic was honestly really good. Like, after Champions, I felt like we had like one of the, at least last year, I think we were one of the top three, like, played the most. I saw some tweets from like Ascend and Gambit at the time. They said how many games they played, and we were like in between there. So, so I was like, okay, so at least our work ethic was pretty good from at least from the Western teams were in like in the top three. And then the only thing that I felt like after Champions was there was like a disconnect. Obviously, we don't properly have an IGL, so there's like a disconnect between like how I envision at least approaching the games and how they actually approached it. Like, we went out to Ascend. I felt like we chose we let Bind through. They're like really historically good on Bind, and I felt like we didn't play how I wanted us to play in that game. And then obviously went to Split and they were just better than us. But like, I felt like throughout like our time, there was always just like a bit of a lapse in between, and it was kind of from having no IGL. And then, yeah, this year started, so I kind of wanted to tackle that because I felt like that was the best way that we were going to progress. I just kind of wanted to just get them more involved in like the kind of team stuff, the strat stuff, the comms, just server time. And then, yeah, long story short, I felt like I didn't really get that back. Like, I didn't get up to the level. So I didn't feel like we were progressing. And then that kind of like sparked something in my mind where normally I would go back and I would just like do all of the work again. I'd do a lot of like the lineups, the strats, but I felt like I had probably like burnout for the first time. And I felt like I'm a person that can put in a lot of hours, but this felt like burnout kind of more due to due to them. I wanted them to just go that extra mile. Like, obviously we were doing a lot. I'm not saying that anyone's lazy or anything like that, because we won. Like, we put in a lot of time, but I just needed that extra like 5% from everyone just to kind of cover and just kind of like make the distance in between. And I didn't feel like that happened. And then obviously that mixed in with we obviously didn't in theory qualify, and then obviously from the circumstances we went through, there was a different in mindset there. Like, in my head, I don't know why I think weird sometimes. In my head, it was like when I was going back to when I was observing, and I was like my first time at like the Face It minor, and I was like really wanting to prove myself, and I was doing like 18 hours a day. And it was like a Black Swan event. I was like, this is going to be like this again. It's like it's like
we might win it or something and go all the way. Yeah, sure.
It's like our chance to prove themselves. And I thought we were going to just be going for it. Like, I thought we were going to just be doing like way more hours than we've ever done. I thought everyone's going to be super motivated, and it just felt like it was another event. And that was when I was just kind of like this. It didn't feel, I don't know if my expectations are too high. Like maybe that's it, and maybe they're unrealistic, because again, like we did put in a lot of hours. I'm not saying that anyone's work ethic is bad, but we just needed. I just felt like we needed that extra step, and in this game, you need motivation. Like you need to be changing stuff up. I think that's proven, like with how Fnatic play and just getting new players in their team and stuff. So yeah, pretty much just that. I felt like we were kind of getting a bit stale, so something had to change for. I feel like something has to change for them to qualify into champions. I won an IGL. Those 5 are like super happy to just stick together. So it's like, well, I'm not in a place where I want to ruin anything. If they have belief, they'll get motivation from me stepping down and getting a new coach that can pretty much do what I was doing at the beginning for the first year. So yeah, I just felt it was best for both parties.
Okay, we'll obviously dive into some of the things about the players now. You use them a lot. But one thing, what I'm picking up from what you're saying there is, it sounds like because you didn't have an IGL, like as far as I can tell, what I took from what you just said is this: there's no dispute with like players. You didn't have like a beef with someone, they didn't want you kicked or anything. But the problem is, it sounds like they're fine sort of with how things are now, and they're just putting in the reps. And then, like, if people don't know, pro players sometimes are like this. Like pro players are the people where, this is the eternal battle of the coach. You're trying to tell them like the way you got into this situation wasn't that good, and they're like, no, bro, if I just hit the headshot, like then actually like it would have worked. Like that's just pros. They always just think it's like I've got to hit another headshot. That's always the way out of the problem, right? It sounds like though, like what you essentially are trying to do as the coach. It's like you were the IGL in a way. It sounds like you're the one preparing all the stuff.
I mean, yeah, essentially I had to fill that role, and like essentially when you do that, you're getting all of the when stuff goes right, obviously like there, and then when stuff goes wrong, obviously you fall back and like you take all the slack for it. I felt like. I mean, yeah, that's the role that I stand up for. That's kind of what happened. Yeah, I do feel, and again, this is like could be my fault as well because I didn't go out and get us an IGL. Like, so that's like my own fault as well. But it's at the same time, it's like I felt that we could achieve such good levels without it, and I felt like I always want to progress forwards. So like I felt like I could have made them, and like we could have filled that void. But I just felt like the extra mile just wasn't there.
I mean, part of the problem, though. Oh, you go on, Gio, jump in.
I was just going to say, like, what it sounds like to me is that the teams sound very comfortable. Like, they're all comfortable playing those 5. And like you said, you know, you pseudo-qualified for Masters. And it's not that they were being lazy, but they weren't necessarily putting in, like, that extra thing for the proof. Like, do you worry that as a unit, they are kind of just very comfortable with where they are? And also on top of that, if the answer is yes, do you think like any of that comes from the fact that these aren't like new players, they're players who've been around for a long time and maybe don't feel as pressured to prove themselves as maybe like a team full of rookies?
I feel like the pressure was at least always there. I think that's always just there when you're in a top org. I think it's different in this game, especially like being so fresh in this game. Yeah, I feel again going back to the Fnatic thing, like they're proof that you change players and you can have like this honeymoon period, and they're in like a constant honeymoon period because they just keep changing players and being good. So yeah, I think there's always pressure of that because in this game, I think it's more important. Let me make an example, right? So FNX, right, in the major, he comes back after 4 years of not playing Counter-Strike, obviously, and then he struggles on Vertigo at this major, right? He looks pretty good. Like, honestly, his stats are pretty good. It's very impressive. But then he struggles with Vertigo because that's like the change.
No, he hadn't played that map when he was a pro, yes.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't be able to do that in Valorant. Take 4 years out and come back, you wouldn't be able to do that. You have to stay keen all the time. So like, so you have to be constantly playing. You have to have that motivation. So yeah, I felt like there wasn't. I mean, there is definitely pressure from that side of things. I think their careers in this game are probably going to be shorter just because of how much you have to play and how much everything changes. Yeah, going back to the IGL, the IGL stuff. I don't know. Again, it's just like I think it's a lot of they do everything great, right? They do everything great. They're 5 players that are all really, really good, very good at what they do. So in a sense, it's just like, why do they need to change anything? If that makes sense. Like we're getting okay results. I still, again, like champions, we could have won. this event we could have won. They can still win events. These 5 can 100% win events. But for me, I need to be progressing, and I want to do the thing where I want to feel like we're constantly progressing, and I want to aim for just like consistency of just like winning events like back to back. Like that's how I view it. That's what I want to do. So again, it's not like me saying that I don't think they can do it. They could go ahead and win this champs without me, like for sure. If they have like a keen coach that fills that void, 100%. So it's never been about that. So yeah, maybe it's just like, why do they need to, I guess, and like why do I feel like I need to? Why does that void need to be filled? Maybe is more why it was questioned.
Even though I don't agree with the perspective, I actually think I understand what the players like that think, though, because like there's some CS:GO. There's a very classic example of exactly this, which is FaZe Clan used to have some of like the greatest players ever in CS:GO, and then they kicked one of the best IGLs, and instead of just pick up like another really good IGL, they effectively just went through they just cycled the 5th position and let different people try, and then a bunch of them were washed, unfortunately. And the whole reason why is exactly this, right? The really, really superstar players, especially the ones who have a little bit of cerebral nous about the game, they know how to play, they all think naively. It's a flaw in human nature. They think everyone's like them. So they're like, right, well, if this guy just knows what he's doing, then he's going to... So they naively think, right, all of us can sort of be like a mini IGL effectively, and we don't need an IGL. Whereas like even when you actually have that genius player, the IGL usually has his own overview perspective, and he's maybe setting you up in a way you're not thinking about. Like there's, unfortunately, it's almost the flaw of stars. And the problem with your team, as far as I can tell, is you've got a whole bunch of stars, and they all have that mindset.
Yeah, pretty much. It's that's very accurate. Yeah, I kind of did what they're doing, right? I tried all of them in the IGL role. So
who do you think did the best?
Yumpy, for sure. Actually would say that I still think Yumpy can be a really good IGL. I felt like the time's always never there, for sure. Like I felt like there was too much pressure on, and people wanted results really early if we were to do it. And I felt like honestly people were a bit too critical of some of the stuff. Whereas I think for like the first 3 months where you're trying to IGL, everyone should just be like giving you praise all the time, even if it doesn't feel comfortable. I feel like there should never be any negativity flying about with it. So I felt like there's a bit too much of that, and maybe that knocked his confidence a bit. But definitely Yumpy I still believe this guy can be an IGL for sure.
Okay. One thing I did wonder about on the IGL topic, though, is I will say from talking to other people on other episodes, especially the people from CSGO, they do admit the sort of, obviously IGLs are sort of short on the ground, not least because unfortunately you don't get all those switching from CSGO because it's super valuable in CSGO as well. Like there's a reason why people don't know. Boomer 32-year-old Carrigan might be about to win the world championship in CSGO because think about, I always say this, like the biggest skill for the IGLs like experience. So he just gets fucking better and better every year in that sense. So the problem is, like, I know this is where I have a divide from fans, because a lot of fans just like the headshots, obviously. So they all think, for example, like the famous example in CSGO is they think I just like overrate MSL, right? This like another Danish IGL who's sort of like a tier below. But the reason why I don't is they don't understand that like you can't bring a brand new guy in and think he's just going to make the experience gap up. And have, like he might have skills, you might have a basic sense for this team, but those guys, like they're the people where if anything they go the other way, they make more out of the players you have than the players you. They don't have to have the best. They create the unit. They make the team in that sense. So, like, one of the things I wondered about with your squad is, I would have thought, I mean, it makes sense that you say the players weren't that bothered about it. I would have thought your team would genuinely be the #1 destination for an IGL. Like, you know that thing recently where fucking Bone Cold was like out of that. If I was him, I'd be like, get me in Team Liquid, we'll win the fucking championship. Give me those players, and that. What more do I need? So, what do you think? Were there actually people you almost got? Were the people you were trying to target? It seems like I say, unfortunately, there's sort of like 4 or 5 people who were really good at that, and then the rest are sort of people they're just doing it a brand new role, or they've never played IGL before.
Yeah, there's definitely a drought of just IGLs and just any kind of 5v5 shooter, it seems like. So yeah, we talked about getting some people. We never really trialed it. I kind of, again, like everyone believed in the squad. Like even like me, I believed in the squad fully. And we just needed to try. So that's why I didn't want to change anything. I felt like our chemistry was really good with everyone as well. Everyone actually is like mates. That's super rare. So I really just wanted to keep that and just try and just do anything I could just to try and fill that void. So yeah, I felt like, I don't know, I felt like I filled a good amount of it, and I just wanted them to kind of experience like how much work goes into it, and then just like spark just different thinking, and just have a, I don't know, just watch more games and just see if it kind of just sparks just better mid rounding. Because like there was a different period where our attack sides, like it's so easy to get the defense sides like relatively good in this game, but the attack sides, like with us, there's definitely a stage you'll see it in our results where it just lacked because of mid rounding.
Okay. I thought what we could do, Gio, is maybe to make it interesting, I'll ask about Team Liquid play. You give me your perspective from seeing them in Valorant, and we'll talk to Sliggy, and I'll like tie it into some things I know from CSGO. So like, obviously the big name on this team is Scream. It's one of the biggest names in FPS history. If people don't know, by the way, like even when he was not relevant at the end of CSGO, like if you'd have gone on to a random forum, I'm not joking, in like India or something, that's for couch, like everyone would know Scream. Like that's how huge his name is. Like really was like an iconic figure. So in Valorant, who is he? Who is he to you, Gio?
I think so. Scream definitely represents one of the star players of the overall scene. I remember when I first started really getting into Valorant, which was around stage 2 of last year. He was definitely one of like the first players that I was like really came across and was doing really well at the time. I think Scream's an interesting one because everybody knows how good he is as an individual, and this has been a very consistent part of criticism from me, so I'm actually really curious, Sliggy, to hear what you have to say about this. It's almost been frustrating at times because he has been trialed through all these different roles and different agents that haven't necessarily, like, at least from my perspective, looked like they've like facilitated his abilities. I mean, the big one that I would always talk about is I hated Scream on KO in stage 3 last year. I hated it. But it's almost felt like he, as an individual, has so much to offer, but there's never really been a time where it's felt like he's really settled into a role or settled into like who he's supposed to be in this game. And that's kind of the strange thing because people still talk about him in such a venerated way, like just, I don't want to say without criticism because that's not quite true, but like people don't talk about him like he's washed, but then also it just has never really felt like he's found his place.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sliggy?
So my way with it, I pretty much agree with what you said. I think it's pretty fair. I would say a lot of his time was spent on like Duelist and like Reyna, and I genuinely think that he got a little bit unlucky. He's the best Reyna in the world, like hands down.
I love Scream Reyna. I was always such a big fan of watching him on Reyna.
It's incredible, yeah. But for that to happen, you have to have another Duelist that's going to go in, and
right.
There was a big meta where Astra, like basically hitting sites was just super hard. Like going into choke points, you basically had to. There's like a meta where you just had to split everywhere. Like you had to always just split. You could never really burst sites too much, just because of Astra. It was like a must pick. And as soon as Astra was must pick, it just meant that this agent just wasn't viable at all. So there was like a whole, and like this agent was around for like 6, 7, 8 months. Like it was just meta. So his one main agent that he was good at just like got completely wrecked for like 8 months. I think they should bring it back. Like honestly, I think it would work now. And that's kind of where I left at the beginning. So when we got knocked out, we came 4th. We thought we weren't going to go to Iceland. We had a big talk about like long-term goals. We were just like, we need to get him on Raise because he has to kind of we has to
which
have
he played this week.
Yeah, which he
on
played this week.
Icebox. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's extremely meta now that Jet's been nerfed, so that's where you're going to see some of that. But yeah, I feel like he never really had a role. The problem that I had with him was he wanted to play Duelist, but he always wanted to rotate. He wanted to be everywhere. I feel like, he actually genuinely has a really good read on the game. I feel like he's a really good rotate person. Like, he's really good. But for that to happen, you need to be the right agent in this game. And a lot of those agents are like KO, and the agents that he maybe hadn't spent too much time on. So even though I think he's good in the like rotate role, like as a mindset and as a player, but agent fit wise, it didn't really work too well. So that's kind of why we were putting him on like more support agents, just because he wants to be rotate, he wants to be everywhere. So it's like I tried to give him as much freedom as possible. He is a talent. Like he is an absolute talent in this game. He can just win rounds just by pure aim, and it's like I wanted to just make him feel as comfortable as possible. But I do think I think the past 8 months has been a bit brutal to him, just because his one main agent that he played just was so out of meta, just because of Astra.
The interesting thing is, as always, one of the things I find fascinating about esports games is I actually do think people's character and how they think about the game, you just visually, it manifests in the game and their style, the choices they make, how they make decisions. And so the interesting thing is a lot of things you're saying about Scream make sense from his history in CSGO. Like, if people don't know, he is genuinely one of the best mechanical players to ever play any version of Counter-Strike. As in, like, if we're talking back in the day, obviously not now, I'd obviously take like fucking Nico or something now, but if we were talking like 4, 5, 6 years ago, if I had to like bizarrely do an aim lab and I have to get all the fucking bubbles or like the earth explodes, I would pick Scream to win, like save the earth essentially. He would never miss a single one. He has that level of like fucking bonkers mechanics. But the problem he always had from my perspective, because I knew a lot of his in-game leaders in the French-Belgian scene, and basically it went like this. It's like if he was in his form and he was really good, you had to almost sort of like make a little area for him and then he could just do what he wanted over there. And then that's when it was good, right? But the problem is in later years, either when he faced criticism, maybe his form wasn't that great. It was never his aim, by the way. He was one of those weird people where you could just have a period where he wasn't just playing well. Or even worse, if in his team, he also, here's the thing people won't know about him because he seems like a very charismatic guy on stream. He's not the guy in the team though who's going to tell people like, give me this, like do it that way. And like, oh, I should be the starter. He's not going to do that actually. That was more like the Shoxes of the world in our game. So the problem I thought he had was if his team ever sort of decided to put him in a box, as in like, right, you're just actually going to do this role only, or you're already, or you know what, I'm going to micro you. You just only like come this, that destroyed his game, dude. And it's like, it simultaneously destroyed his morale, which then destroyed his game further. And that's how he ended up genuinely at the end of CSGO. The no team wanted him, even though I guarantee you, if you could sort of like memory wipe him Men in Black style, and then just tell him like start today. And so he could be a good player now, mate. He could still play CSGO. I really believe it.
I mean, his aim is unmatched. Like, I've been an observer for like 5 years, and I still like watch some of his stuff. Even though he does a Valorant again, like people from CS have moved over, it's still some of the fastest stuff you will see. Like it is the fastest, most accurate stuff you will see. So yeah, he is a real talent. Again, I think that's kind of accurate in terms of like we didn't want to keep him in a box. We wanted to kind of just let him go. I actually think that's why the best, or like, at least for this LAN, we made him IGL. I actually feel like that's where he thrives because he can kind of like he can just say where he wants to go and then everyone works around him. The only thing I have about it is maybe he won't put enough effort in outside of the game in terms of like watching the other demos and stuff. That's my only worry, I guess, with him being an IGL. But maybe with a new coach they'll have like a better dynamic with him and they can make that happen. But yeah, we'll see.
He's also the person that actually made me realise it might one day be interesting to watch Valorant, because I remember seeing all the early streams, right? And obviously it was all the fuckers from like Overwatch, and so we're all just using all these like OP abilities. And I was like, this looks like a worse version of Overwatch. But if you remember when Scream came in, the joke was it's like he didn't know there was abilities. He was just literally going around only headshotting people, but just doing all the like 1.6 style clips, like he was just fucking acing people on like the pistol or whatever. But he was like just stationary, like moving around or whatever. So clearly the aim translates as well. What do you think on that, by the way? Because I know some of the players, this is the problem, mate. I can like reveal this myself on the podcast, but they'll never bloody say it in interviews because they're scared of saying like the game's bad or something. Basically, behind the scenes, one of the reasons why some of the top pros say like they do like Valorant and they would switch if like they weren't as good at CSGO, but they think that like basically some of the elements of like the spray and stuff, it's not as like controllable as in CSGO, and so they think it sort of like evens the skill gap out a bit. So on the one hand, they say it sort of like boosts some players, but it also means if you were like the absolute best, you maybe don't dominate in the same way. What would you say to that? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, again, I think that's pretty accurate. I would say like having no spray pattern means that you can not be as good, and maybe you get like lucky, and you don't have to learn as much. So like maybe there's more people that are in like that field of being pretty good. But again, it also means that like the first. This is why the Scream is so good. Like the first bullet accuracy, if that's what you thrive at and that's what you're good at, that's incredible in this game. Because let me use. Okay, I'm so sorry that I'm going to insult him a little bit, but like Freiberg, like at the beginning of NIP, right in CS:GO, like yes. he really was at the top of the game because he mastered the spray for so long. Yes, like for so long. So like having people that don't kind of like master that, and like his first bullet accuracy isn't. As good as, as the others. So like you can't have those kind of people that just like religiously learn that style of it. So yeah, I think that first bullet accuracy in this game is incredibly important. But again, like you're saying, if they miss that first bullet and then it just becomes a spray battle, then it's a little bit RNG. So like the skill gap is, and dude, some of these guns are crazy in this game. Like it's not like It's not like CS. You can
Sure.
you can like loads of the little guns are honestly sometimes way better in a lot of the situations.
I just wonder, like, because I think we've ended up in conversations quite a lot on this show before about, you know, what's more valuable in Valorant out of, would you rather have like an insanely mechanically skilled player or someone who's really good at understanding their utility? And I think this is where I've had dissatisfaction with Scream before, where I'm like, yes, he's an incredibly impressive player, but it's like, if the single most impressive thing about him is the fact that he can aim really well, I feel like it puts a team in a really risky position, because like you two were just discussing, you know, you could have him with an IGL or he can IGL for himself and help like really set up situations for him to thrive in. And it's like, well, then you've got a team that's revolving around one person, like mechanically doing really well. And I feel like Valorant is a game where you can make that work. It's not that it's impossible, but it's that I don't think like long term that's going to be the optimal way of like having a team. Like that's why people talk about the guards so much, because they have like incredibly mechanically skilled players, but they're also just so good at using their utility together. And this was one of the big problems I have with Scream, is it's like, yeah, he's an incredible Reyna. I could watch Scream play Reyna all day because it's so much fun, but it is so risky to just be like, I'm super good at this agent because it means I can pop off mechanically, and then not necessarily be comfortable on others, because of course, if metas change, then you're kind of screwed. But also, like, going back to the example that I used before about I was never really super happy with his KO, it's because it was still very, like, the way that Team Liquid played when Scream was playing KO was still very Scream-centric. Like, it was, and I get it, it was the early days of KO. People were still, Cloud9 hadn't really, like, set the idea of how to play KO in that really supportive way. So people were still kind of sort of playing him as a semi-duelist, and I get it. But it's still just, it's always felt very, like really precarious, I think is the best way to put it for me with Scream, where it's like, cool, he's super mechanically skilled, but like, it can't all just be around him, and you can't rely on him like that, because if all of the supportive stuff isn't as good as it should be, then you are going to have inconsistent results. And that's always been my fear with Team Liquid, is it's like, cool, you've got all these stars, but like, are the stars in the right place? Are they supporting each other as best as they could be? Or could these players be doing way better, like all separate on different teams where they have that kind of support and not kind of clamoring for it themselves?
Yeah, I think that's so what I'd say to this is it did feel a bit like that. Like sometimes when we were playing, it felt like a live or die by the sword, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would say because the game was so fresh that you definitely get away with it more. So, and like, again, if there's any game for it, I believe it's this. Like, you can have an agent that actually gets something when it gets like the first kill, like with Reyna. So like, it is the perfect game for that. Like, the percentages are a bit more skewed. Like, I think that you can get away with it more in this game. Like, I think this is where he's going to have like the most success. I would say also, I definitely felt like what you're saying. That's a reason why we put him on KO. That's a reason why for the first 2 years of this game, everyone that I coached, I would make sure that they played different roles, because again, I think that the game moves so much. The game could go to a point where you would have no duelist, or it'd be like 3 sentinels on this map or stuff like that. Like, it's going to change so fast. So I needed them all to be as flexible as possible and just have as much longevity as I can make. So that's kind of why I put him on KO as well, as like with the rotate stuff, just because I'm trying to, you can't be a one trick in this game, in my opinion. Like, you're a one trick, your agent gets enough, then you're like non-existent. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I was trying to do with a lot of my stuff. I know that I got a lot of criticism for like changing people's roles and stuff like that. It wasn't all me, but again, I don't mind taking the flak for it. But I also think, like, long term, like in the first 2 years of this game, I don't think I made a mistake. I think I extended some of their careers, like, for sure. I think they're going to have good careers in the future because of how I approached it.
What did you think of his brother then, Gio, Nivera?
Well, I mean, when I think of Nivera, I just think of like at Champions, and it just suddenly, I don't know, it just kind of changed the way that I at least I looked at Team Liquid, because when I first kind of came into Valorant, I really liked Team Liquid, and then Masters 2 happened. They didn't quite do as well as I thought they would. And then I was highly critical throughout Stage 3, didn't go to Stage 3 Masters, and then you had this change, and I guess part of it was sort of like exacerbated by the fact it's on LAN. You could see, like, you could literally see the chemistry between him and his brother on stage and stuff like that. But it just looked like it was like a breath of fresh air into the team. I think the questions since then have been about, and it's sort of what we've kind of touched on so far, is like, given his skill set, like, there is still a gap in the team in terms of, you know, like IGLing or whatever, and like long term, is it the right person to have? But I will just never forget like the feeling of excitement around Team Liquid, seeing Scream and Nivera play together at Champions. Like, that's my first thing I think of when I think of him.
Come on, Sliggy.
Yeah, so Nabil or Nivera is like he is an incredible player. Again, he's a bit like his brother in terms of just mechanically, he's insanely gifted. The only thing I wish with him is he would be more vocal. Sometimes he just doesn't have as much as a voice. I kind of felt like a lot of the stuff that he was saying was always right, like always accurate. When he decided to like call mid round or like have input, it was always good. So I was trying to like get as much of that out of him as possible. I think this guy can be the best player in the game. Like I really do. I think he, if he just keeps on playing, keeps on grinding, I think this guy is going to be the best player in the game. I felt like he's a really good asset. Yeah, the only thing I would like want more from him is like talking, and that's because that's what we need in the team, like more ideas. But he's just so good. Like I think he's gonna. I think he's like one of the best mechanically gifted people. I felt like he takes good criticism. He has a good way of playing the game, and I think he's a natural gamer. He like gets a lot of agents fast. He picked up the game very fast. So yeah, I have no qualms with this guy. I think he's incredible. Like he has a very bright future. And yeah, like there's definitely chemistry between them. Like when it'd be like in a clutch situation, they start talking French, you know, like, okay, it just felt good. Like when you're just like, okay, when they start just going like, it's so fast, it sounds so fast. You're just like, hey, they're going to win this round. It's like if it's like 2-on-4,
just let them do it.
Yeah, literally just let them go for it. So yeah, I think he's good. I think, just straight up confidence. I just think straight up, if he has a bit more confidence and he just like plays the game a bit more, I don't see why this guy wouldn't be the best. I actually think he could be like, he's maybe where the star player should be. I would have liked more time with him to try him on a few more roles. I wanted to play him on Chamber a lot more. Chamber's really strong. Even at this event, I wanted to. We played like our last game against Zeta, and I just said to him, I was like, "Oh, you should play Chamber on this map for like the game. I think it's going to help. I think it's going to help so much." And he was like, "Oh no," because we had like a 6-0 or something with the comp that we were playing, so he didn't want to change it up. But I just wish he had just like a bit more confidence in his ability, because in my head, like if he was on Chamber on this map, we just would have he would have just dominated, just would have taken it over. So I think he just needs a bit of confidence and could just be more vocal and just trust in himself. But yeah, he's a sick dude. He's a good player, really good player.
Yeah, I'm just looking at actually his Chamber stats from the last 60 days now, and other than Viper, which he played once in the last 60 days, that like his stats are so like above and beyond. It's entirely unsurprising, because like it still fits into the Sentinel role, but you have more of an opportunity to like pop off, and he's definitely mechanically able to do that. So it's like marrying those two sides of his skill set, I guess.
Yeah, see, this is where low-key, what Sliggy said is mad base, because he has just actually like set these guys up for their next role / career / not all just being the same fucking duelist player. And then obviously someone else is going to just finally get the fucking pickle jar top off, and then they're going to get all the credit, aren't they? No one's going to know he was fucking with the tea towel on it, trying to get it open. Or he had it that close to being open, right there at the end.
And also I would say, like as I was talking about earlier, we felt like we were stale. I felt like me leaving actually gave them.
You think that's going to fire them up or like make them do something?
I kind of, when I left, I'm not going to say what I said in the WhatsApp group, but I kind of, I'm not going to say what I said in the WhatsApp group, but like that should motivate them, and I think hopefully you'll see some fire from them, because again, I'm a coach. I criticize a lot, like maybe I don't approach it in the best way. But I feel like I want people to be open, and I want people to just like just take it. So yeah, I gave them a bit of criticism before I left. So yeah, they're definitely gonna be fired up. It's definitely gonna give them motivation. So they kind of fit it in with what you were saying.
So he even sacrificed himself to make Team Liquid great. He's on some Captain Oats shit. Like, I may be some time, gentlemen. Like, just fucking leaves. All right, so I'm just figure it out yourself. Here's the thing though, because Nivera in CS:GO has a very interesting story if people don't know. Because funnily enough, with all that drama with Twists and the NA players and did they switched over, if people don't know, he's someone who unfortunately was in the spot of some of those players that are in NA, but in Europe, because in CSGO, unfortunately, this is actually low key, by the way, where the CSGO players still don't know what's coming, mate, which is they don't get that the new talent, especially in NA particularly, is just all going to Valorant. So it's like you're going to get diminishing returns on the players you do have. You're going to have to stick with them for so much longer. And in Europe, the issue is we still do obviously like regional teams and traditionally stay within the same language group. So it means, for example, when there was only 2 French teams and eventually they swapped because they got a superstar player, they had 1 French team, which is the team Nivera was on, Vitality. When you have that team, it means you're in this ridiculous scenario. And they went through this with a bunch of players where the problem is the jump up from the next French team is so huge, you're never going to make it in one go. It's going to take you a while to adapt, but you're competing for the championship immediately. So any flaws are going to be magnified so much. And if you get caught, you can't just go to the next team, which is 1 level behind, and go, right, build my way. It's like you either go back to the bottom or you have to go to Valorant. And essentially, that's what Nivera did. So what people might not understand is he came into one of the best teams already. It was like, say, like a number 3 or number 4 in the world. And so they brought him in as like, because here's the interesting thing, he obviously has mega mechanics too. Although I will say, that's almost like his parents trying to make an actual whole team or something. They're like, right, listen, your brother's the fucking sick rifle player, so you have to be the AWPer. You know, AWPer only for you. Like, I don't know what that's about. But anyway, he's an AWPer for some reason, if even they have sick mechanics. And so basically what they used him for in Vitality is the knock on Vitality was they had a superstar prodigy in Ziwu, but then the rest of the team were like really experienced older players who definitely knew the game, but they just don't have mad firepower anymore. They're the sort of people where realistically you would just want like 2 or 3 of those guys, but they would always have 4 of them, and then they would have like Ziwu. And so the problem was it was too imbalanced. So to a fan, they just thought the old players are shit and have no skills. So the flaw was signing Nivera is what the fans would want. You bring in like a young aimer. They were even using him. They actually initially integrated him. They didn't put him straight in the team. They made him the 6th man, and then they would pick specific maps that they just were like a bit middling on, and then they would make him like the AWPer on that map and be like, right. So for example, famously Dusto, I think it was Inferno. Like they would do it to swap out the player they want to take out. Secretly, it was just some way of getting chalked off fucking Inferno, whatever it was. And then the other angle was obviously it would give him a little bit of like, you know, you'd get like the boost from playing that game well, but he didn't have to play all the maps. He didn't get exposed on like, you know, the fucking super hard maps like a Vertigo, if people don't know, was a fucking nightmare to try and AWP on if you're not experienced, etc. So I actually thought the approach they were taking was very interesting, but the problem is what I heard behind the scenes was, because if you ever watched the games, he was actually doing pretty well. They broke through, they were winning championships, everything, even though he was still like in that 6-man role. The problem, as far as I could tell behind the scenes, was this, because as I said, the players that didn't have the firepower were just like, they were like royalty of French CS, and they were all mega brains at the game. They all knew how to play their roles. They could play the shitter scrolls in the game. The issue was, I think some of those players and the coach maybe like lost patience with the fact that he can't gain the experience instantly. He's got the skills, but like that level up takes time. It takes years sometimes. And obviously in this case, they'd have had to gamble and just put him straight in the starting roster, and then it's like make or break at that point. So I actually thought he was a perfect person, someone who should go to Valorant. Like as you're saying, Valorant, it's possible he could be like the best fucking player. That was going to be a really hard path in CSGO, unfortunately, because I feel like you made the point earlier, but in games like Valorant that are newer, a lot of these things aren't present. The problem with CS, like the analogy you gave about FNX is, like, essentially, your experience never actually goes out the window. Yeah, there's new things you have to update, but, like, that sort of, like, bank of experience, that's still there. That's still going to play. And if you don't have it, you're at a disadvantage no matter how good your aim is with the crosshair.
Yeah, exactly. I actually think that they set him up very well for this game. In terms of, say that you have to. So there's again, I'm going to compare it to CS. Like there's loads of games, there's loads of opportunities in CS to like prove yourself. You have like so many games, you have so many officials. In this game, it's so much high pressure. There's way less games. There's so much more pressure on these games. So it's kind of like he was getting prepared for this anyway. Where he just he's playing like he's probably playing the same amount of games now as he was in CS. You get what I mean? Like he has the pressure
True.
there. He's like got to fill some boots like this, and he's just used to it. And so he's already ready for this kind of pressure. So that kind of aspect really got him good for this game, just the amount that they play, and he's great with dealing with pressure. Like that's why I think he's really good on Chamber as well. Chamber like has the TP away, and this guy will just hold on to the TP. Like he just has pure balls, man. He'll just hold on to the TP for ages. Yeah,
Okay.
like most people will just you'll flash a chamber off and they'll TP. This guy will flash.
Yes.
You need like 5 abilities to push him off an angle because
Yes.
he's just going to hold it until he's 100% sure that like they're going to shoot him. So yeah, dude, he's got big balls basically.
That's definitely underrated as well, because if people don't know, the analogy there, because obviously I can't go to CS, we don't have abilities, the analogy there is like League of Legends. If people don't know, a hallmark of the best possible players in League is this: sometimes they look silly because they die without like flashing away, right? The reason why is because they've learned to walk the fucking tightrope of like, if I ever don't have to, what an OP advantage it is that I don't even have to use the ability, but then I just get the kill and I have it. So like essentially, like that's a sign that you are mega confident on that agent, right? Because the other guy, the noob, it's like in League, the noob just flashes every time, but then he finds out later, like, I didn't even need to, I could have had flash. Like sometimes that actually shows a lack of confidence that you just you abuse it instantly.
Yeah, it's a very good comparison. It's literally exactly the same as that. It's just like you don't want to, it's such a big ability that you don't want to blow it. You don't want to lose your position, the map control that you have. So if you want to make sure that you're 100% using it when you're 100% in danger. So, yeah.
Oh, wait, I would also be, sorry, go on, Gio.
I was just going to say, it's also great to talking about like the TP on Chamber is like, if you are someone who has a really high chance of getting an opening kill, it's a great agent to play on as well, because especially if you're willing to hang around on that teleporter for a little while and you want to position a little bit more aggressively, if you can get an opening kill that isn't going to be traded and then you TP away, that's something that I think Ye in NA is very good at doing. And you know, like with Nivera just being as mechanically gifted as he is, right? It's like that's again just another thing that's really going to play in your favor against an opponent.
Sure. One other thing I would be remiss if I didn't ask about, especially because your team had a bunch of these superstar aimers, Sliggy, is this. Another thing that my friends from CSGO told me, and we've had some people say it on this episode, of this show as well, is they told me behind the scenes, like, dude, you don't even know, like, because basically, like, look, because they were from CSGO, they low-key, like, sort of hate on the Tenses and Sinatras of the world who weren't, like, the superstars in CSGO, and they do think, like, well, I was better than him in CSGO or whatever. So what they were telling me, because I was like, well, aren't they way better than you? Like, look, dude, they're, like, superstar players. And they were like, bro, it's the game. You just don't understand. And they basically told me, Sliggy, that if someone like, I think the best example would be like Nico. Basically, here's the problem in CSGO. That's the reason why actually the people who aren't the AWPers usually aren't the ones at the top of the world rankings. It's not that they're not as skilled, it's that if you use the AK, you take damage while you're doing damage. So the problem is, like, you're probably not going to kill all 5 unless you're just way better. So if you're Nico, basically, who's like the best rifle player, like the problem he has is if he gets like 2 entries, fucking hell, amazing job. Doesn't matter what that. They told me in Valorant he would just like be unkillable, because they said some of the duelists basically he would like get a kill, then he'd have like a dash, then he could move it and he'd get another. And they said basically if someone like that ever really comes over, they are going to tear this game up. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much that. We kind of saw similar like CNET and stuff where just like there was a period where these players were just, it would always be 4v5, and like as long as you have good fundamentals and you can convert that, which again, not many, that's like a harder thing from all these people coming over from different games. They don't understand like some of the basic fundamentals as much. So yeah,
they're like trade concepts and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it was like a big thing, and that's why that's why I think like Chamber's like the best agent in the game right now, because you have this ability to just get out. It's such a broken mechanic that I'm not sure should be in these games, really, to be honest. It just seems too strong. So yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know what they're going to do about it. I know they got rid of the jet nerf. So I mean, it's in like they got rid of the jet dash. They nerfed that. I think that's in a good place now. I think they need to do the same with Chamber. I think we'll just see what we saw again with jet, where it's just like dominant for a year. I think we'll just see that with Chamber, basically.
They were. Oh God, you're gonna maybe correct me on what the actual thing is here. But when they were talking about a Chamber nerf, where they were like going to take away one of his trademarks or whatever.
Yeah,
the thing I really didn't like about that is that ultimately, at least the way I see it, and I think this is something that Lothar also said, is that Chamber is kind of there to be a sentinel, and I think that like him being like really good for like mechanically strong whatever, is great. And I know that he was kind of brought in as that Jet alternative. But ultimately, like, taking away his sentinelness and his ability to gather and use information seems a little bit counterintuitive to me. Like, that doesn't necessarily seem like the right nerf to make.
Yeah, it feels like they need a separate pool. Again, I would lump Sage into what you're saying. Like, Sage and Chamber, they're like sentinels, but it's like, it doesn't really feel like that. It just feels like they're this own little...
They've been put into sentinels because there's no better
needs to be another type of agent, basically.
Yeah, but basically just a different type. Like, they've made like these types of like sentinel duelists and stuff, and I feel like the lines are getting blurred a little bit with some of the stuff that they're doing. So I don't know if that's just going to be something that continues to happen and there's just no lines at all, and it doesn't matter, and like the talking of like initiators and duelists and stuff is just irrelevant. But it kind of feels where it's going, because there's definitely sentinels that are like not really sentinels. So it's like then the whole talk of like, you see like the analysts on the desk just talking about it, and it's just like, it's kind of irrelevant, like almost like they're saying that. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with that, really.
Sure. Actually, I should, since you mentioned it, actually, I even take that for granted that obviously people came for the Valorant from other games or maybe never have played a Counter-Strike / TAC FPS. So if people don't know, here's a quick primer for you. Essentially, the entire game of CSGO and Counter-Strike in general is based upon a single concept called trade fragging. And it's just the premise that if, like, Sliggy's the defender and he kills me, it doesn't matter if Geo's my teammate, because it doesn't matter, because if Geo's my teammate, she kills Sliggy, and even though in that scenario you're like, well, that's 1 for 1, and it's like, no, because here's the premise. Cause in Counter-Strike, I'm on the T side, I have like 4 or 5 people there. They at most usually can have 3 in the site. So if we just trade, we end up on the bomb site, we get the bomb down, even if it's even numbers after that. But then because it's even numbers, we then are the defenders. So actually we're in an advantage, even though technically no one got an overall advantage, right? So that premise basically is how, spoiler, now you can go watch CS, you might actually know what you're watching. But basically the premise, the reason why you know that is the blueprint that works is because almost every single really good Danish team does the opposite, as far as I can tell, to Valorant. What they do is their IGL goes in first, knowing he'll put himself in a position where when he dies, because he's a boomer, then his fucking superstar aimer just knocks your head off because you're not even aiming at him, and then this just plays out and you keep getting on the sites. Whereas as far as I've seen this league, obviously correct me, I'm a fucking noob to Valorant. It seems to me in Valorant it's more like you use the utility and the other agents to set up like the duelist to go, and he just kills everyone when he goes in. It's like there isn't the guy who goes in first to get traded. So how does the trading aspect work as much in Valorant, and what's different, do you think?
It's definitely different. It feels very similar on defense, right? It feels very similar to defense, and then attack, like we're just saying, is it feels a bit different because there's people that can like get through the choke points instead of like in it. So it's like, so it becomes a bit different. Like the dashing out of choke points becomes a lot stronger, and that just means that the trade potential goes out the window all the time. So, but yeah, I think on defense, what you're saying is like, it's very, very much the same as CS. And then, yeah, even like good teams, just like exactly what you're saying again. And that's why the chamber thing and like the dash feels like a broken mechanic, because it's like just getting that pick and having no trade. Like you could play everything perfectly, you could do the most perfect thing, but the guy can TP out or dash away. It doesn't feel, I don't know, you're getting, I don't know, when you're doing stuff perfectly, it feels like you shouldn't get punished, but like you still are. But yeah, what you're saying is it's definitely different on attack with like these agents that can just fly around and just go into smokes and dash through. So it's not as like cookie cutter as CS, I guess. But yeah, that's why I don't want this mechanic. Like I don't want the dash. I don't want 2 mechanics in this.
Sounds like it removes some of the sort of team concepts.
Oh, for sure. Dude, it just means that one guy can just take over and have so much impact. Like obviously AWP's incredible in CS, but like in this game it feels like on these agents it can just be like way more impact than we've ever seen.
The premise of having an AWP and an agent that can do a dash seems like, surely that we can resolve that, surely, guys. We can get rid of that, surely. Yeah, surely the downside of the AWP is you have to be a bit stationary, you know.
That's what I mean. So like, it's good that they finally enough jet. It took them like 2 years. Now we have jet, but then they had another one in.
Yes, true.
They had another one in now, just as well. Just once they've done
it's
that.
Like it's kind of annoying that they've nerfed jet after, because their first response was to add chamber as like the alternative, and then now they've chosen to nerf jet after chamber is already in the game. So what you're left with is then another agent who still has that kind of ability, right? And it's sort of like, where does that balance? Whereas if chamber had come out later and been designed around the nerfed version of jet, then maybe it would be different.
So inadvertently they made Chamber 2 OP to make it an option for Jet.
Kinda, yeah. Like
Right.
he was it's not that he was like a counter to Jet necessarily, because I think that we're not really at a place where there are many direct counters in Valorant, but it's more like he was like the alternative. He was we're trying to lessen the pick rate of Jet. And it didn't necessarily work that way, and now they've nerfed Jet, which is a good nerf. A lot of people were a bit pissed about it at first, but it was a good nerf. But then Chambers kind of left still as how he was designed to specifically be that Jet alternative.
Yeah, it feels like it's basically just a 1-for-1 swap. It kind of feels like. The good thing that I will say, like obviously it's not as good on the attack side, so that's great. So like it's not as bad as where Jet was like in this position. So it is a bit more balanced, but again, I still just don't like that mechanic, and I don't like shotguns. They're like the two mechanics that I don't think belong in these kind of games, really. So.
Sure.
But how else are you gonna play hookah on bind? You need a shotgun, man. That's
dude,
cool.
I made the amount of times I made them use this gun. I was just like, let's abuse. Like it's been nerfed like 2 times and it's still incredible. I'm just like,
The
let's just use
judge,
this.
yeah.
That was like the first year of me coaching was just like, right, let's just abuse this game.
Sniper judge.
That's like how we won everything in Fish 1-2-3. We just abused the hell out of the game. Like it was so broken. Like all of these agents are so broken.
Another thing I want to ask you about, obviously from the coaching role especially, is the utility in Valorant, because if people don't know, that is actually a really weird topic in CSGO, because effectively, like I've told the story on this podcast before that no one even used Molotovs for like the first 3 years of the game or something mental, even though we actually found out now they're amazing. And then second, in fact, they even had to nerf them, they were too good, but just no one used them. And then even more along similar lines, it genuinely wasn't until, I'm not joking, like 2017 and 2018, people started properly like making the utility OP. And so what's crazy is, like a famous example is this. It's also because we didn't, by the way, really track specific utility. We did like damage overall, but we didn't do like you didn't have the stats on HLTV, like how many people are flashed or flash percentage or the grenade. And so what we found out was like even some things that sound so stupid. They sounded stupid at the time, but they sound even worse now, Sliggy. Like you remember that famous one where it's like Flusher from Fnatic had like absurdly high like grenade damage compared to everyone. So someone asked him, right, and in true Flusher fashion, he just said something like, I just only throw the grenade when I know they're there. But that sounds so simple, right? But that's not what anyone did with grenades, because since grenades are rubbish in CS, people just used them like sort of almost to like by process of elimination, like is there someone there, or you know, or I'm just going to leave, so I'll do it in case they're there, you know. And essentially, Flusher, his 200 IQ move was, is he there? I don't know yet, so I'll walk through it. And then he would just throw it when he was, and that would just do more damage. And so similarly, right? Flashbangs is another concept. So like, people really didn't expand that. It seems like in Valorant, people have gone way deeper into that now. I mean, obviously, with the ability, it's somewhat part of the game, right?
Yeah, I think it was just like a learning curve, especially for me. Like I watched so much on like of Counter-Strike, so I kind of like looked and I saw like what you're saying. I saw so many different metas. I saw like Astralis actually using like double nades, so that finally when I'm observing, my overviews look good. So, like I was loving that. Like It was nice to actually see like utility and like people actually thinking about the game. So yeah, I just kind of took all of that stuff. Like the org. The org was in the game for so long. Like we were saying, Molotovs was in the game for so long, no one used it. So that's like when we started the game, we're like, let's just first of all. Like Raze as an example, I would do like boombot lineups. Like let's just do lineups from day one. Like let's make the best use of it. Let's just kind of learn from the games before and just make them better. So
it's so funny to me because in Rainbow Six, whenever someone who had a background in Counter-Strike, for example, would watch a Rainbow Six game, they would always be so confused as to like why in Rainbow Six you don't use flashbangs to flash people. Okay. And like in Siege, it's like super intuitive because there's a lot of defensive utility that needs burning. So whether that's like something that covers a door and passing through it will burn the utility, or like there are certain pieces of utility that will swallow projectiles. And so people use flashbangs to burn utility, and then they can use their grenades and they can pass through doors and things like that. And so that's what flashbangs are for in Siege, because like the value you get from actually flashbanging something is not higher than the value of doing that. And so in Siege, like it's got its own little like thing. Right. And so people will come and like watch it from other games and they'll be like, why aren't you using flashbangs to actually flash people? It's like, no, because they figured out that a long, long time ago that that's not the best way to use them.
Sure. Yeah, I also think like a big learning point for everyone was there's a Korean team called Vision Strikers. So like everyone would kind of put the basics of CS, like me included, like attack sides, CT sides. Like our defense sides were very stale, and then you kind of like these guys came along within like the first 2 months, and they're doing the most crazy XX on like the defense side where they take map control, and everyone's just looking at it like, oh, this is like what we should have been doing. This is how you play it. So like they definitely sped up a lot of it as well. Like all of their util usage. Dude, there was a period for like
Flash and dash.
Yeah, it was a period for like between like 4 to 6 months where everyone would just handpicked these guys' strats and just used them just on defense. Like everyone would just call it Vision Strikers, and it would just be like a flash dash or like stun dash, and like you kind of just saw everything to come together on the defense side, and everyone's like, well, this is how you play it. So yeah, it's nice to see the progression, but it happened fast in this game, really.
What about that? Another player I did want to ask about, Gio, is the aforementioned Jampy, the Finnish, whatever he is in this game.
Yeah, Yampy. So I remember when Stage 3 started and I started casting VCT, I was not a fan. And it's not that I thought that he was bad, it's that I just couldn't figure out like what he was meant to be. Because it was like, so what, he's played on like Sentinels, but he's also playing a lot of Jet. But then I felt like the way that he played Jet was very different to the way that you saw other people play Jet. And then it was around that time that he was IGLing, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. And I remember like watching him and thinking this looks uncomfortable. Like there was just really something I didn't like about it. Is I just felt like he, as an individual, had a lot of potential, but was in a situation that was not necessarily conducive to him finding a lot of success, which is kind of crazy because it's like statistically, he would actually do pretty well in a lot of situations. Like it was clear that he was very, very good. I just personally never really liked the way that I had an issue with the whole like him IGLing while also trying to play Jet. Like I thought those things had to be separated, and that could be a personal philosophy thing rather, but he's someone who I've always kind of been like, yeah, I understand that he himself is good, but I would like to see him play the game differently, or at least that's how I felt very strongly when I was casting VCT EMEA, which is the latter half of last year.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of good points. Definitely the IGLing Jet thing was something that he actually came to me and said, like, I don't think I can IGL as well on this agent. Like he definitely felt like it was too hard to concentrate at like different things at once. He's trying to make space and like look at the minimap. It didn't really like work. That's why we changed him over to some more supportive roles. Jampy in general is... like I think he's a superstar. I think he really is. I was so surprised of him. I messaged him while he was still playing CS. I basically just messaged all the people when the game was early on that were like FAC banned and stuff like that. They're
Perfect
like,
idea,
yeah, literally just like, well, like, and like he's an up and comer. And then he just messaged me. He's just like, no, I'm gonna stick with CS. I was like, okay. And then like 3 months later, I think something was going on with the Ents guys, and he was like, yeah, I'll give it a try. I think we gave a few trials to like Yugi just because I wanted to see like what the AWPing Jet stuff was like. And like it was super strong. So we're like, okay, I need a Jet AWPer basically because we didn't have one at the time. So yeah, we got him in. I was so surprised by him. I didn't think he would have like this leadership kind of role. I didn't think he would have like this motivational. He's just like
he was a bit quiet, didn't he?
That's what I thought, but he just becomes this like leader. He's super outgoing. He's everything that like I just didn't think that he was going to be. Like
he looks so unassuming and innocent.
Yeah, literally that. But he's just like he's like loud. He like has so many like leader traits, and I was like, this is incredible. Like this is kind of what we need. Like the kind of person to like pump us up, joke around, get us all motivated. Like him and Scream like together to kind of motivate everyone. So yeah, I got like way more than I expected from this guy. He's the best to work with. He's the most coachable. He's the best work ethic. Like I can't sing this guy's praises enough. I think he's incredible. I really do. So that's kind of why I thought that he would be able to do the IGL, just because I have full belief in this guy. I felt like he could do everything. Like I felt like I could just give him so much stuff, and if he had enough time and everyone believed in him, I think he could achieve crazy things. What you're saying about like him trying to like definitely, I had to like reel him in a lot. With like the Jet on attack, he would just start dashing at people. Like instead of going to like an off angle.
Yes,
he was just,
I remember thinking like we need some discipline on this man.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, so that was like the main thing that I had to do with him was like discipline. He was like literally just. It was like the agent could headbutt people or something. He was just dashing at them. It was wild. So we had to try and find like discipline with him. And yeah, just try and find his role. in the team. I think sometimes he gets a bit too carried away. He's very young, he's very enthusiastic, so sometimes when he's on these agents that can do this stuff, he'll like go before like waiting for the team or stuff like that. So he's kind of like the most like, I felt like I had to do the most work with him, but I felt like he was the most open to it. Like there was like no ego here. He just wants to get better. He just wants to be the best. Sometimes he trolls way too much, so we had to kind of like address that stuff. Like he loves it, but I can't say enough good things about this guy. I think he's a superstar. He was everything that we needed to replace Echoes with, but just more. So yeah, it was great. I kind of would have liked to pick up an IGL, but it was at the stage where, and again, this all goes back to like what I said at the beginning. Like I should have picked up an IGL at one point, but like the game was so dominant with an operator in a Jet's hands that actually was more of a priority. It was that strong. It was that strong. So I had to get that.
This was pre-Astra as well.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it was really strong.
Yeah, because the weird thing about Yampy is, as you say there, the key term is he was VAC banned in CSGO. So if people don't know, I actually low-key think this is why you have to have people who know the other games, or you're not going to know these players. Like, low-key, he is like one of the top 5 most important players that moved over to Valorant. Because if people don't know, he would be a star player in CSGO if he was not VAC banned. Like, if you saw this guy's skills, and then the fact that he comes from Finland and they have a good team from Finland called ENCE, right? Basically, they wanted him the whole time, dude, when he actually got old enough and became good. Because if you saw him stream, his skills were mega. Like, the funny thing is, even though he's like an AWPer and a Deagle player, he's not the guy who just like hides on the off angle. He's the guy who just goes out and shoots everyone in the head with the one bullet Deagle, or no scopes everyone in the fucking game. That's why, like, FPL games, people knew like this guy must be amazing. But the problem in CSGO is this: Valve basically doesn't want to police the game. They don't want to be putting out a competitive ruling, etc. So what they do instead is they just have a hard and fast rule. If the VAC ever catches you, you're done. You will never play professional Counter-Strike. Now, they've changed the rules slightly now, which is like, I think it's some weird thing. Like, if you're really young enough and it was in a certain site, you can, like, there's like a 5-year period that passes now. But at the time, they're hard line. It's why he was taking them to court. He was actually suing them for, like, essentially denying him a livelihood. What the problem is, his case is also probably the most egregious example of like where you should sort of have a little bit of bend to that rule, because it's not like he was a pro player, cheated, got caught, and then was like, well, whatever, I'm going to stay playing anyway, and you should unban me because like it's been 2 years. He's someone where it really is like almost what like the lie on the forum would be. It's like, if he did it once when he was like 12. Even then, it actually seems plausible he did sell an account to someone and they just did it. So essentially, he didn't ever in any way impact the competitive game. He wasn't trying to be a professional cheater. This is just a one-off like incident of it. And it was when he was like 12 years old or something mental.
Is account selling bannable in CS?
The problem is this: if you sell the account and then someone cheats on it, unless you can prove that you weren't on the account, they're going to think it's you. So that's basically his problem.
It's like the
you're allowed to sell it.
Account selling ban.
Oh, you have to understand, that's also where Valve is very different to Riot. You know, Riot's like, you cannot share accounts. Like, the entire game of CSGO is like, because it's got this fucked little economy where once the game's over, we've all just blown all those thousands of dollars, by the way. We're like, there's not in real life, it's just in a video game. So the way around that was, you can just sort of sell all the shit 24/7, and you can like, that's why it's all about like having the knives and the skins and the gloves and everything.
Yeah,
so like, that's sort of the way they made to sort of make it like exciting to have the economy. So yeah, the problem is you can sell the accounts, but by the way, that has been a notorious problem, because you can imagine the people who did cheat just say they sold the account or it got hacked and they couldn't get into it. And then sadly, every now and then you get a real case where they did and the person is totally innocent, but basically there's sort of, it's almost like if there was no appeal process. It's just like, sorry, banned forever. Like, once a cheater, always a cheater. So he was the person where I also thought, like, fans aren't going to know it in Valorant, but like, mate, he was already, this is how good he was, Gio. Even though there were a couple of players like this, there was also obviously some of the high-power players like Brax and Lord Swag, etc. They were also really skilled once top players. Here's the problem. When they got unbanned by the other people, not Valve, so they could play every tournament except the majors, because unfortunately it all builds into trying to win the major. They proved that no one's ever going to actually put you on a top team if you can't play the major. You're always going to be on the tier 2 team. The Yampy guy was so good, and Finland's so small in terms of populace. They were willing to gamble it, even when he wasn't unbanned by VAC. They were just going to say, you know what, since at the moment we're not going to win the major anyway, fuck it, bring him in. He's actually really good. So that just shows you right there, like, this guy actually was. If they'd have ever unbanned him, like I say, I thought he could have had a brilliant CSGO career. So it's just one of those ones where he's almost been gifted to Valorant. You know, like, you guys just get to have him, and maybe he'll become one of the best players.
It's funny because like there have definitely been people on social media and notably Reddit who are very disgruntled about the fact he's allowed to play in Valorant because
Really?
he had the
Holy
back ban.
moly, okay.
I've definitely seen comments before, and it's not. I wouldn't say it's like a prevailing opinion.
All right.
But I've definitely seen comments from 1 or 2 individuals before who are like very strongly think like if you had a VAC ban in CS, you should not be allowed in this game.
Because here's the weird thing, if you don't know, the reason why that'll never make total sense is because the other problem is this, and this will actually break your brain when I tell you this. If you cheat, but you don't get VAC'd, but you get caught by a better anti-cheat, but it's like a third-party one, like ESEA or the ESL wire, you are allowed to play. So here you go, Gio. Simple cheated and got ESL wire caught, but because that's not VAC, he still plays and is the greatest player of all time and was probably going to win a second major. Like, that's just unfortunate, the like fucking alien. So it doesn't make sense, essentially. Like I say, Valve's whole thing really is just sort of like, look, I don't want to have to deal with it. So if you cross that line, it's over. So there is no rhyme or reason to it. Like, for example, by the way, you can imagine not a single fan says, like, get Simple out the game, get him out, he used to cheat.
Yeah.
Like, no one gives a fuck, 'cause he's
You
simple.
would be the heretic.
Exactly.
You'd be the guy
course.
they beat in the street if you were the person who
Yes.
said get rid of Simple.
Exactly. So there's none of that, Chaz. Don't worry about that.
And I think that's like a good thing why, like a good example of just the whole thing of why Valorant and CS like coexisting together is great, because
Yes.
like this is why we actually saw them, like they reversed his VAC stuff. They added the rule, like you said, like they changed their stances on it because they saw the people were going to another game. That's why like I saw these people like arguing like, what's like, oh, this is a better game, this is a good game. Like, it doesn't matter, dude, like whatever you prefer is good. Like, it's great for the ecosystem to have both of them side by side because they're competing. Like, that's incredible. They had no competition, so they could do the crazy rules, like you're saying, like one VAC ban for the rest of your life. Like, they could do it, they could do all of that stuff, they could do whatever they want.
Yep.
But now that this is in place, it's great. Like, that's why I see all these people like arguing about the two games. Like, it doesn't, like, I genuinely prefer Valorant to CS. Like, I do. That's just my opinion. I think CS is an incredible game. I spend like all of my life doing it like 15 years or something of my life, like playing just iterations of CS. I love it. But like, I prefer Valorant. At least I think I do. It's been enough time for it to kind of settle in. I think I just prefer the game. Like, it's fine to like both games. Like, they're good coexisting. It's perfect. That's what we needed for a long time.
Sure.
It's like takes away the monopoly sort of.
Absolutely,
ideas,
yeah.
right?
It's like he's saying, the problem is, like, I mean, low-key, this is actually why, if I was Valve, I would just go the extra step and just make it, like, the obvious thing to do would be, if it wasn't in professional play, make it, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years and you can just play in professional play. Because in that scenario, the other thing they're mistaken is this, and this is just a game dev way of thinking, not the way people in esports think. They're really thinking of it like, well, we have to treat everyone exactly the same. The guy who could be the best player and a random Joe off the street, it's like, you don't really, like, there's always, it's different how you treat people in soccer who are fucking professional from how you treat a guy in the street, isn't it? You know, it's not the same game. And then also, they might naively think like, you know, their game's so good anyone would stick around. Mate, if you stay for 2 or 3 years after you were banned and cannot play as a pro, but you are skilled enough to be a pro, that's like doing your fucking good behaviour in prison, mate. You've actually shown you love the game. And that's why the most criminal one to me ever is Steel. Steel basically is the guy who went into prison for murder and then just like became a fucking pastor, taught like 17 people how to read. They all got jobs when they got out there. They all have like families. He's like a mentor. He's at the fucking cookout with all these fucking people. And then after that, Valve's like, yeah, but you did like fucking throw that one game that wasn't even a bit like, come on, man, he's fucking paid his debt to society. Like, can this guy just play Counter-Strike? He did stay for like fucking 6 years. He just stayed waiting for one. He was just basically waiting for the phone to ring, like, surely now, like, and it never happened, sadly.
Yeah,
Never happened.
You're the pasta.
It's such a weird thing with them, and like that's kind of why. See, I don't know like my actual stance on this, because obviously like the coaching bug and stuff like that. Like, let's be honest, like people.
Are you scared there might be someone like that in Valorant, by the way?
Oh man, could you imagine?
Oh.
Literally, but like that kind of yeah, it's just like. The stance on all of that is just like the players must have been involved. It's like I'm kind of glad that that's
On some level, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of glad like Valorant's around, so it didn't get to like a mad stage where they're just too strict on all of this stuff. And like again, people would have thrown games like and not
Of
had
course.
it come up to
By
life.
the way, they did.
Yeah,
if people don't know, this is also the area where Valve is maddening. And I can say all this shit here because, I mean, I can say about Riot, but I just want Gio to have a career, so occasionally I fucking restrain myself. But Valve, even if they were watching Suck My Dick Game Newell, I don't give a fuck. So what I'll say is this, the reason it's also mental the way they deal with stuff in that game, the other thing as well, in my opinion, when you come from a Valve game, is they're also never going to actually have like a set of rules in advance. they're going to react to you after the fact. And unfortunately, this is why my analogy always was, it's like the parent who's too busy to look what the kids are doing, right? But I tell you what, if you get their attention by being naughty enough, you're going to get the fucking hiding, aren't you? You're not just going to get told stop doing that. Because at that point, you've like interrupted them while they're working or something, they're going to go fucking mental. That's like the Valve approach, unfortunately. They don't go like, right, here's all the things that don't do, just stay within those lines, you're fine. It's more like, right, you've really fucking pissed me off, because I have to come and care about esports now, motherfucker. I was trying to create one more skin over 3 years that fucking get this guy out, and they ban you completely, right? But that actually is mental the way they do it, because I have to say, when they set up like those coaching bugs and all that stuff, like, here's the problem. It's only the moment you start catching people, you start giving them these mega punishments. So if people don't know, the game Steel threw was genuinely a game that the only people he fucked was anyone who bet on I Buy Power, basically. That's it. He defrauded those people. That's it. The game itself was a meaningless game. It was an online league game. His team had already qualified to the LAN finals. So by the way, sometimes you even troll that game anyway. So their logic to them was like, and here's the kicker everyone doesn't know. Dazed, who was his teammate, owned the other team that they were playing in the match. So he was, I'm sure, even thinking like, dude, I'm only cheating against my own team. Like, it's not even like I'm actually trying to fuck those guys. I'm even giving them the win. So the problem was, that is treated as though it was like the greatest crime in the history of esports, right? Here's what people don't know, Gio. Because no one was looking into match fixing, but we do know this, we just don't have the hard evidence. Because the real secret of why they got caught was one of the people who wasn't even in the game, but he was just involved with the betting on this match. He confessed it all in text DMs to his girlfriend, and then cheated on his girlfriend, and that was the way she got back at him. She just revealed it and sent it all to Richard Lewis, including her phone. That's the only reason though, because here's the problem. Richard already had all the evidence. He had like the betting patterns go crazy to like 99% for the underdog.
Yeah, but this was like the cherry on top of the cake.
The skins all go there. You could trace them all. Like they didn't even do a good job of it. Like there was no crypto back then, so they didn't even know how you could abstract
trading.
it. Yeah, you could have absolutely caught all these people, but it was just essentially actually the sort of sexy TMZ angle that made people take notice and they banned them. So the craziest thing is this. Fans do the same thing. On Reddit, right, to this day, there'll always be a fan like, Steel should never be unbanned. You know what? Spoiler, I won't say the names, but actually a few of them have pissed me off recently. You know, people like Virtus Pro. Yeah, I've heard they were throwing games. I've even seen there's some compelling evidence that actually they might have thrown games in the early days. Because if people don't know, back when you used to make like, the 3K a month, they were just looking at those meaningless games, like the same scenario. You have like a best of 3 and you know you're going to beat the team and it's in the upper bracket. So you go, right, first game, it's our strong map. Oh God, the odds are crazy for us. And you just put the bet out. You get your little 10K back each. And then you still, by the way, you might still win the game. You might still go on in the bracket. So to you, they were even thinking, it's harmless, isn't it? So you don't know, CS fans, how many of your fucking heroes in those early days, first 2 years through games, like I'm talking about major winners through games. I'm talking about like people in the HLTV top 20. People also, by the way, who, this is just what esports is like, who even came out when some later people got banned and were like, you can't be doing that in the game. And the whole time I'm just sat there like, motherfucker, if I had that evidence. Richard Lewis is too kind for you guys. If I had that evidence, mate, I'd be replying to your tweet with a screenshot and just go, is this you? Like, because there was some mad ones. There was even one where, like, one got semi-caught, for example. Like, basically, the great Russian player, Dorsia, who later went on to win a major, he just, like, played on, like, his girlfriend's account or something. But this is the problem, right? It's like he must actually be the ultra-feminist Geo, because he didn't naively think, well, I'm playing in this, like, random female competition, so I should probably, like, tone my skills down. He just played normally and just like dropped like 40 or something.
He played on his girlfriend's account in a women's competition?
I think it was like a national tournament or something. Yeah, it was like a female CS thing. So the problem was he was just way too good. Like he played like it was not. I don't know why he doesn't understand the premise of like fit in. He just dropped like 40 on them, and then everyone was, even though that would obviously bring the most attention ever, wouldn't it? Like, wow, is this the best female player in the world? It's like, no, only for that one game because it was Dorsey playing or whatever. Like, so there was so much clownery in fucking CS:GO. In that sense, by the way, as well. There's the other angle, Sliggy. I'm feeling really worried about some of these pros. I've seen it happen with my friends in talent already. They think the game is like CS, so they come over to Valorant and they start treating the industry and the scene like it's CS. And as you've seen, well, a bunch of them aren't there anymore, are they? They're all fucking gone. The players are so close to that, bro. Like, when I see these NA players from, like, FaZe class stuff, and they're just fucking popping off about Riot, I'm like, oh, you don't even know what's coming for you. You don't even know if you step out of line in this game, and especially like we're talking about here, you fuck up, like, cheat or something, they will do you for life, mate. You will get the harshest punishment. They will wreck you, and they're not going to be disinterested. They're not going to be like, look, unless you really get our attention, if you do one thing, they're going to be on you.
definitely that's something that I've noticed from like events as well, because I've done loads of CS events. When I go to the events, I felt like again I used to work for like Face and all that stuff, so I would like talk to all the admins and stuff like this. Like the admins, you could feel that they knew in CS, they knew that the players had all the power, like for sure.
Yes, especially big players like superstars basically bully them, don't they?
For sure. So, and then when you come to like Riot events, I don't feel that at all. Like I literally feel like it's just their way, and I genuinely think that this is better. Like I've seen some of the stuff that some of the players in CS get away with. So like honestly, I'm fine with it. It's better. It's definitely like a stark difference that I can see like from the events. So
yes.
So yeah, players definitely can't get away as much, and it's like their rules and like what they say goes. But yeah, I genuinely do think to an extent it's better. Yeah, comparing the two as well, like the thing, like going back to the whole Yampy, so he joined us, and then 2 months or maybe even like a month later they decided to revert. They put the VAC ban thing in, like pretty much just giving like this young guy like a choice of like what he has to do, of like does he go back to the game that like he essentially loves, or does he stick with this new game that he's only like 2 months in and join a big org for. So it's definitely like a big decision for him. I had like a lot of talks with him, so that was kind of like a nice process to kind of like plan out, I guess, essentially like his future. We kind of so how we left it was like we kind of just agreed, and like this sucks obviously for like looking back at it, we just kind of agreed together we would like win a champions, and then if he really felt like he wanted to go back to CS, then he could go back. And I think maybe that's why he talked about going back to CS recently on some of his streams.
Right.
I think that might have been like when I left, maybe that was like a trigger reaction. But I think he's still, as long as like what I can see, like from like the talks that we had, like he's gonna, I think he wants to win something fast, and then he'll kind of like consider it. But I think he's not, like I don't think he's done with this game until he like wins something, and then it's kind of like then he has to make a decision. But I don't think he's going to do a change until he like wins. That was basically the conversation that we had, that we were going to do it together, because it was such a big decision for him, and he was like 18 or something, 17.
Yeah. Like, here's the example, Gio, of how crazy player power, like superstar player power, is in CSGO. In the RMRs, which are basically our equivalent of your VCT, it's the qualifier to get into the major, right? Yeah. So it's a big deal, like, and obviously it affects seed and all that shit that you have, like, in the same in VCT. When they got to the final of one of the RMRs, Gambit and Na'Vi, the two best teams in the world, just came to the tournament organizer and just said, oh, you've actually scheduled this as a BO5, but we're just going to play a BO3. And that happened. That actually happened. Even in the other regions, if they just chose not to. Now, obviously, I was just mouthing like, why did they even get to say they're the fucking players? What are we? But like, that is the power of. The problem is that if they could just go, well, we won't play the game then. And I know again, if an adult would just go, well, then you're disqualified. But that's not CS. That's not even in people's brains in CS. And CS is the opposite. It's like, make the player happy because he's going to go on social media otherwise. Oh, that's an angle I think we hate about CS. Because the problem is,
sounds very juvenile.
It could be brilliant. Like if the players were responsible with it, they could just use it to point out big problems. But sadly, like my joke was, it got so bad eventually. It's like if you had the wrong brand of water at the bloody event, you'd see it on Twitter like immediately, like they're not like flaming ESL or whatever. You're like, bloody hell, guys! Like, how diva are you going to go? You know, it's a pretty good job. Like, they went too far with that shit. They went too far for sure.
Yeah, I think it's like a worrying thing as well. Like, I'm not sure. Definitely, CS is a big example. Like, I just don't think the players should have as much power as they have. I think it goes to some of their heads for sure. I like power. Power just does weird things to people. Especially like, I don't know, they're not like born into it, or like they're not used to any kind of it. So, and it's just like frost upon them. So yeah, I don't think it makes people look good, and people just no. So yeah, I'm definitely glad with like Riot's stance on that thing, but maybe they go a little bit too far. Like if I'm just talking about like just warm up like routines like before games and stuff, I would like them to be a bit more relaxed with that. But I get it's like a schedule and they have to do stuff, so I get like both sides of it. So
people don't know that's what basically ruined me, by the way. It's like I used to 10 years ago, I used to have like 3k Twitter followers, and I was just a journalist. So guess what? You can give any fucking opinions you want when you got 3k followers. Like, what? It's only your friends follow you at that point. My problem is if you scale that up 100 times, all of a sudden the whole world was listening. It turns out I was just trying to talk to my mate like he's fucking shit him, and then they go what? And it's like the old people queuing up with the pitchforks. Fucking hell! All right, what? Why does everyone care about my opinion?
It is. It's funny because in Rainbow Six, it was something that I noticed a lot, because Rainbow Six started off as a very like the players have the power kind of scene, and then it became like a semi-franchise. Like it's not a franchise scene, but it's got a lot of like revenue share and whatever. So it's like it's got a structured format, etc. And even now, you still see people who, you know, like were pros back in like the first year of professional Rainbow Six, who still don't like it when, I don't know, for example, if like an org gives up a spot or whatever. And yes, obviously it's shit when the players are the ones who kind of get fucked over by things like that. But you get a lot of people who are like, this is why the players should own the spots. And it's like, no, like I don't personally agree with that. I don't think the players should own the spots because the players shouldn't be the ones with the power in the scene. Like that's, you just descend into a very, I don't know, like, it's too grassroots. Like
just
you
becomes too imbalanced the other way, doesn't it?
Yeah. I memean, there's definitely a balance to be had. But just that whole what you just described about like in CS where the players just decide they're going to do that. It's like, no, fuck off.
No, I know, exactly. The problem as well is this, right? I even know there's like a logical reason why people fall into the trap of thinking that way, though, Gio. Because first of all, obviously they are fans of the player, not the fucking org owner, you know.
Yeah.
But more importantly than that, true, for a long time in esports, it was the player getting the short end of the stick. Obviously, like it was the org owner that made all the money, and then he gave as little as possible, and the TO made the sponsorship, and gave as little as possible. The difference now is this, though, because now every entity except the player and the game dev, the top and the bottom of the ecosystem, because everyone else loses money and they just make money, it's actually mega imbalanced now, because now you get this scenario where, like you're saying, they're like, but really it's the players, so they should own the slots. Like, then what was the owner paying for and losing his money for? Like, you're aware he pays the salaries. Like, he pays them a fucking king's ransom anyway. Like, the only thing he owns is like their fucking spot, and then get to use their likeness for the time of their contract. Like, you can't take that away, otherwise no one's going to be a bloody owner. Like, you actually have to make every element of the scene attractive. There has to be a reason you'd want to do it. So it's even why, I won't get in this fucking sidebar, but why in CS there was another very controversial angle that would always get brought up, which is when we had the stickers for the majors and you would make money off it, they would all be like, it should just all go to the players. It's like, bro, what if that player like just got signed to my team yesterday, but my team's Fnatic, and like you're buying the sticker because you're a Fnatic fan? It's like, why would that money go to the player? You know, I own Fnatic. Like, bro, that's my IP. He's got his fucking sticker signature. I own the Fnatic logo. Obviously, I wish I did fucking own the Fnatic logo, but anyway.
We saw something similar in Valorant as well. Like we had the champion skins.
The champion skin, yeah.
I saw a lot of...
Was it the same debate, I imagine?
It's like, I hope that this much is going to the players. It's like, players have made a lot of money. Oh, I mean,
exactly.
I'm totally just stealing your point, but...
No, it's true. Yeah.
We even had like this talk in between our team, actually, like trying to make everyone see the sides of it. And like we kind of... I'm not going to say like what our percentage was, but we feel like it was pretty like reasonable. Like they have to take like the big chunk of money because they do so much for us. Like they do so much. Like again, like even though like I'm stepping down from Liquid, I have like literally not even a bad word I can say about Liquid. No. Like even if I wanted to, they did nothing. Like everything was so perfect. They gave me everything, like every opportunity. So it's like they have to have something. Like you can't. They have to get like. I would say like they could probably have like a bigger percentage like from it all. I think it should be like
especially for orgs you're talking about, mate. Like I'll give you an example. Liquid's an example of why. Because here's the difference, right? I assume there's teams right now still in Valorant where everyone's just in their bedroom at home. They play. If you get to VCT, you go to VCT together. If people don't know, Team Liquid has one of the best facilities in Europe. It's literally like 20 minutes from the airport in Netherlands, and it's at the fucking station. You just go to the next building, you go up it. They've not only got all the like the boardroom, the area you watch the fucking demos, the player areas, they've got streaming booths. Then on the higher floors, they have the apartments, and you just stay there when you boot camp. Like, bro, this is some like next level shit. This is like Korean level.
Yeah, it's actually incredible. Like again, and that was like part of the reason. There was like two main reasons. Like when I was thinking about leaving, that were kind of had me like questioning it. I felt like for my own career, like personal stuff, and like for the team, I felt like it was better. But also, I didn't want to leave Yumpy. First of all, like I felt like I wanted to do a lot of like stuff together with him, and then just the org, like how could I ever leave an org that's done everything so perfect for me? Like what you're saying, like the facility is incredible. Like if anything, I've just been blown away from it. Like I've gone to a lot of events, I've seen how like orgs treat their players and stuff. This is like it's madness. Like everything is just so good. So it's like that was like a big thing for me. It's like I don't want to, like, I know for my career, like, I should at least take a step back, but like, I don't want to leave the org. Like, the org is great.
I'll even give you
high
one little.
expectations.
I'll give you one little bit of food for thought for people who still don't get that discussion about like the champion skins, for example. Here's the analogy you've got to think of. Imagine if they played the same exact 3 months, they qualify in, you get paid all that salary, you got boot camps, you're bringing in coaching staff, all this, and then imagine you don't qualify. Right? Does the org go, right? Sorry guys, we're gonna have to slash your salary now. No, you still get the money. So what? So the question is, what do they get for when you do? So that's the point. You have to. The key thing is, we're not trying to rip anyone off. Everyone has to be incentivized, because if you do it right, it actually incentivizes the org to get the best players as well. Like, they don't want to just sell the skin and then have no fucking good players. So if you do it right, the scene will balance itself out. Actually, in that sense. So from what I've heard, it actually sounds like most orgs have a reasonable thing now. Where it's like some of them are just like the 50-50 cut or whatever, or you can even negotiate this in advance if you sign the whole team. Obviously, right? There's one team though. Segue here that isn't technically, well, they are in an org, but we're just not allowed to say the org's name. We have to pretend they're not. And that infers, if you've been following CSGO, where a team called Gambit in CSGO now plays for Cloud9, one of the biggest orgs in the world, and an NA org. So the suspicion is, behind the scenes, that this will eventually probably happen to the ex-Gambit, currently M3C team in the VCT EMEA. So we'll put that to one side. Obviously, no one knows about any of that stuff. I'm just setting it up. But when we talk about this ex-Gambit team now, right, here's the thing, Sliggy. Every guest we have on this show is like, they like their team, probably one other regional team, and then they are all, to a man, fanboys of fucking Gambit. They all think like as in, when I say fanboy, I just mean they don't like them. They're all like, they should never change players, and they're all just geniuses, and they just know everything. It's like, please, can I just touch your feet, nuts, please? Oh God! If the power, it's like fucking Jesus or something. Where that woman touched him, and like the power went out of him. Like, mate, everyone idolizes him. So here's the question, Sliggy. You're gonna have to put your big brain on here, mate. They're not fucking winning any matches, are they? What's going on? What has happened to them?
Yeah, I don't know. At least so first Masters of this year, I think it was like, I'm literally just going to kind of do what you're saying here. I'm just going to give him a load of excuses for what happened with it. Because again, we play against them a lot. We see them in practice. They're incredible. Like, they are incredible. Like, I do think I would rate them as one of the best teams, if not the best team. When they're at their peak, again, like, it changes pretty fast. So at least first Masters, I felt like they were really, really good. They were looking really strong. If I'm honest, like, the schedule got wrecked for them. Like they got wrecked schedule-wise, and they had to play it was something like crazy, like 14 or 15 days in a row, like with officials in there. And then it wasn't like officials. It would be like they played like back-to-back officials, and then the meta changed. So then they had like 7 days before their next official, and it's a whole different meta. It wasn't like a big one. It wasn't like a small one. It was like what I was saying about the Astra, and like you have to completely redesign how everything's played. So that's in the middle there. So they're then going to have to practice that because there's 7 maps. There's like 7 days before the next official. Maybe it's like 4 days. Like, dude, their schedule was so cramped and compact that it was just like they had straight up burnout. Like, it was obvious, and like they couldn't come up with in the space to tackle that many maps. You couldn't come up with enough good stuff. Like I really think that the first Masters for them was just unfortunate. It was just schedule timing. Second Masters going in, I want to say it's Guild just looking good, but they did look bad. Like, I'll be honest, they looked bad. They tried a map that they don't normally play. It's normally their permaban. I know they've been practicing it a lot. I felt, okay, I'm going to flame them a little bit. I felt like fundamentally they don't play the map right. So maybe that's something that they need to look at. Again, I only have one of course, thing to look at. So
low sample size,
yeah, very low sample size. But I felt like that map they didn't understand fundamentally how to play it. I didn't like what they did. And then the map before, like, they just got outplayed. So I think it's a mix of that. It's still too early for them. So that's me kind of like.
But you do still secretly believe you still have still holding the torch.
I believe. I still think they're like the best team in EMEA. Like, they're still the team that. Okay. And unless something different happens. Like I still rate them as like the highest. They're always in the talks of, like, you'd say top 3. You're probably mentioning them like them first. I don't know if, I'm still confident, and I'm still riding the train with them. I still think they're good. So yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting. Like, they're good. They're like, in terms of groups, they're like the most interesting team in that group to watch.
What do you think, Gio?
I watched that Haven game, which was the one where they played that map that they don't usually play, and it was a bit of a disaster. I think it definitely didn't help them that they started out on the defense, which is typically the side they don't like, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, they literally play it wrong. Like, I really genuinely think they play it wrong.
The whole thing looked really disjointed, and kind of strange. I mean, I think it definitely helped that, you know, like Trex, for example, on Guild, I was really impressed with. I thought he played really well, and I thought he was actually really good at exploiting, like the way he played angles around things like smokes and whatnot. You could tell that, like, mech just they would sort of emerge from an angle and be looking in the wrong place. Like they didn't know where they were supposed to be looking. They didn't know like what they were supposed to be like looking out for, and Guild were very good at exploiting that, and particularly Trex I think was really good at that. But yeah, the whole thing just felt very strange. It was like there would be a couple times where Chronicle would get a couple of good kills or whatever, but it was like, oh, he's on his own, you know, like there's really nothing you can build from these kills. They are just kills for the sake of kills. They're not impact kills. And so it was very strange to watch. One thing I will say though, in their defense on you know, on the topic of them playing that map, is I'm always very interested in teams who you can see are trying to expand their map pool and trying to, you know, play maps that they wouldn't usually play and really grow. And usually that is going to start off shit. Like when you first start seeing them do that, it might not be as shit as this game went. But it's, for me personally, I would rather see a team make the effort to bring that into their repertoire rather than just sort of like bury it and ignore it and be like, yeah, we're just never going to play this.
Sure.
Especially when, you know, I think this has been an interesting thing over the last few months, because a lot of teams did that when Breeze came out. But then when Fracture came out, you kind of couldn't get away with not playing both Fracture and Breeze.
Yes,
so you had to either pick up Breeze, or you had to pick up Fracture, or both. So a lot of teams were kind of forced into this uncomfortable situation where like they had to start, you know, going into these maps that they didn't necessarily feel as comfortable on. And while, you know, this isn't a new map or anything like that, it's like new maps will come out. And I think it's very important for teams, if they want to stay on top, they need to be building that into what they do feel comfortable on. So yeah, it was a shit game. They didn't really look like themselves. They didn't look like they really knew what they were doing super well. But I do hope that it's the first building block in a good learning curve for them that will play off in the long run.
Right.
That's my hopium.
I think I think what you're saying there as well is definitely, I like it as well. Like I respect their coach a lot in terms of like, I think he wants to always be, like you're saying, just like moving forward and progressing. I think that's kind of what everyone wants to kind of strive for. So yeah, I think it's good that they are trying the new maps. And again, just harping on about like their opponents, Guild. When we started this year, I felt like they were one of the best teams in EMEA, and they heavily, I would say they actually heavily underperformed, probably the most out of any EMEA team in the beginning of this year. And like when we were playing them in practice, they looked incredible. And then we kind of played them in the officials. I don't know what really happened to them. They kind of dropped off. So they're definitely like a really good team as well. So it's too early to kind of call, like just from this one result. I definitely will have a better idea after this weekend.
A question I would have for both of you, I ask you initially, Sliggy, goes like this. Before I can set up the topic of map pool and stuff, what I need to know is this. How would you contrast it, like in your particular case, to CSGO? Because obviously in CSGO, it's more like, I would say in general, it is actually about how well you know the map as to how you set your map pool up. In fact, you even get very crazy examples. I'll give you an example. You might, I don't know if you remember this. In 2018, when Na'Vi with the Simple and Zeus and Edward lineup, they used to win like almost every time on Train, but they never picked Train because their logic would be like, we don't understand the T side as well, or we don't feel comfortable in like tough scenarios. So even though I would pick it if I was vetoing for them, their logic would be, and at the time it would be like, well, let's go into Inferno, which you might have a worse win rate on because Inferno was the map Zeus, a very legendary caller, just called his whole career on like that. That just is his office essentially. So I want to know is this, is in Valorant, is it more like that? It's like, I understand this map, or is it like, if I have, for example, like very skilled players, I can play maps that I don't necessarily am as good. What's the sort of difference, do you think?
It's actually just a mix of them both. Like if I was going to give a straight comparison, like again it depends like map to map. Like a Haven, if I compare it to like Inferno, it's a lot similar in terms of like a main control. And Haven is the same as like banana control. Everyone's like fighting. That's like the one point at the beginning you kind of have to fight for. It's like really important to like fight for. So you'll see like a lot of contention there. But then you have like these other maps because everything's smaller. Because all of these maps are really small, so like sometimes you want like angel maps, like your Ascent, your Breeze, like these kind of angel maps. That's where you can kind of rely on just pure aim, and you're like, well, that's how we looked at it with Breeze. It's like, well, we got 2 good AWPers and it's Breeze, and we have like Scream, who can just one tap an AWPer most of the time anyway. Like that's an incredible map for us. So it's like. It's a bit mix and match in terms of that. I think some of them have similarities, like Haven stuff has like similarities like CS stuff, even though it is like 3 sites that you plant. But yeah, and then there's other maps that are just pure aim maps, and maybe you don't have to have as good understanding, and you can just go, right, you guys just run around. That's at least how I viewed it in my team.
Right.
I'd never had to put much effort into Breeze, like if I'm honest, just because it's such an easy map to understand and you can just out-aim everyone. Whereas these other maps that are kind of close quarters, maybe it's more about trading, maybe it's more about utility. I felt like we had to spend time on, or even just rotations like Bind. We're always historically bad at Bind just because there's like a teleporter there, and that kind of seemed to mess with everyone's heads. So yeah.
Do you have a sense for what it is, Gio? Like, are the maps that are more like, it's just if you have the aimers, and then the other maps are maybe if you're like the brain team or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I basically agree with what Sliggy was saying. Like, I think the really divisive map that really exemplified this was Breeze, because Breeze was a map that, because the spaces in Breeze are a lot bigger, it is more aim duel intensive, and so a lot of teams would avoid it if they felt like they did not have. Like, if they were more of like a utility-focused team and they didn't necessarily know specifically how to set up that map, because it was very easy to get it wrong. I think people definitely look at maps that kind of way. And you've also got things like, there are maps where you might need to be a little bit more spread thin. And some teams don't like that as much.
Sure.
But yeah, and then the rotate ones like Bind. It's kind of an interesting one, because if I compare it to the way that just because you brought up comparing it to CS, like if I compare it to the way that maps in Rainbow Six are kind of looked at, is Rainbow Six would have here are like scrappy maps, here are like the really cerebral maps, but then in the middle there were a couple of maps that were sort of known as like neutral maps. It was like, they are like the great deciders, like they are maps that actually in best of ones a lot of teams would go to because they were considered exceptionally neutral. So maps like Oregon was kind of this probably won't mean anything to you, but like maybe that one person watching will. Like Oregon was for a really long time the map that all of the best of ones were done on, which got incredibly boring in the broadcasts because it was just such a neutral map. There wasn't a huge swing between like whether it was attacker or defender sided, and everyone knew how to play it. It's like they were considered, we would call them checkbox maps, where it's like, to play them correctly, there are a list of things you got to do.
Right.
If you do them right, then you'll win the round. And so it was like, you just have to follow this step by step, essentially, and it's whoever does that step by step better. And then over time, you would see people adapting on what that step by step was. But then you would have these other ones more towards the periphery. Like there's a map called Coastline, which is just like, if you're going against a team that has really good aimers and great gunfights and you're not as confident there, you're probably not going to do as well there, so it was kind of like that sort of thing. Then there was a map called Theme Park, which was a lot more I suppose like strategy intensive, right? So I feel like the swing in Rainbow Six felt a lot more extreme than it does in Valorant. Which is kind of an interesting one. I think is like, you do have those differences, like in terms of the geometry of the maps in Valorant and the little gimmicks that come. I mean, Bind is obviously a clear one because it has the teleporters. It's the only map that has that. And so you often see like a team will have like their one permaban or whatever, but they're mostly okay on other maps. Whereas in like Rainbow Six, you could have a team who in a 7-map pool like 4 of the maps they don't play. So,
that's mental.
Those teams would definitely suffer on LAN events. Like, trust me.
All right, I see what you mean. Right.
But because the regular season in Rainbow Six was always best of ones, they could do really well.
You can
in
score in the middle of the map pool. Yeah, makes
exactly,
sense.
Exactly. And then you would see the differences once you got to actual majors or whatever.
That's actually the area, again, casuals always misunderstand this. It's not, believe it or not, the worst part of best of one isn't that it's only one game, because in theory, the better team will still win. It's still Counter-Strike, it's not they don't try. The problem with best of ones is when you have the veto system, you've got the same veto system in Valorant. It's like you're never going to go to the weak map. So if I'm amazing on 6 out of 7 and you're amazing on 4, it looks like we're equally as good, doesn't it? Because we just both meet on one of your 4, basically. So we ban 3 and then that one's left over. So it just means you're going to get more upsets naturally because you're making more even games. So you're not really showing who's more versatile and who has the biggest spread.
They actually used to have a system in Rainbow Six, which they got rid of. And I think there was some talk about bringing it back, which I actually think would probably be a good thing, which is when you met in a best of one, the first bans were automatic, and it was whatever you played as your last map. So in your last official game, you would not be allowed to play. Like, let's say you played Clubhouse on your last game, that would automatically be the first ban. And if your opponent played, I don't know, fucking Bank on their last game, that would be automatically banned.
Just to force some more maps to be played.
So it guaranteed that you could not play the previous game. Right. And then when the whole format changed, it went from ESL to Face It at the beginning of 2020, they got rid of that. And that's how we ended up with like these, you know, you could do like 3 broadcast days and do 5 games a day. And like 12 of those 15 games would all be on the same map, you know?
Right. Yes.
Like you could end up with that. And then you would have exactly the situation that you just spoke about, where it's like, you can always land in that neutral ground, so you don't really have to face the fact that there are these maps that you feel a lot less comfortable on. But then once you qualify for like the, you know, whether it's the Pro League finals, the majors, whatever it is, like that's where suddenly, and people would be like, oh, you know, why does this team suddenly look not that great? Because they're like really good in the regular season. It's like, well, because they can play like 3 maps, you know, and they're playing best of 3s.
Now you see, if you're a naive fan, why Thorin hates upsets. I don't hate underdog teams. They're brilliant. I like it when they win games. The problem is this. When an underdog team wins that BO1 on the middle map and they go into the playoffs instead of one of the best teams in the world, that's just an empty fucking spot, isn't it? Because the map that they were avoided in the best of one, the strong team just picks into them, destroys them on completely. And like you're saying, the fan just thinks, because he's not following this part of the game, it's like, oh, the Cinderella run just ended, you know, oh, the magic went away. It's like, it didn't, mate. That would have happened in the group stage if you could pick like that. So the question here, Sliggy, I want to come back from the coaching perspective here, is actually, I think this is an underdeveloped area of CSGO. One of the reasons I do rave about people, Carrigan's the best example probably, is because if you notice, Carrigan understands basically that not only is the veto about getting a good map for me, it is psychological war. Like you can hit, one thing he always does is try, if possible, he's even doing it now in FaZe, is I even want that fucking 7th map. And here's the thing, I'm not being greedy when I do that, because if I get that 7th map, there's 2 scenarios happen. One, because I've got a better team anyway. If I play a bad team and that is their worst map, you can't assume I'm banning it, mate. I might just take it into you, fuck you up on it. And then secondly, because I've got more maps in my pool anyway, it basically means I can do things. I always thought this was genius from him, is think about all the other IGLs where, if you know the way a CS tournament works, right? You finish your game on the Thursday, you're going to play on Friday at 2 p.m, so you get to work quickly, right? Oh, we've only got so much time, right? We're going to do these 2 maps, start watching demos. Imagine you do all that, right? And you do it for Carrigan's best map, and then you turn up the next day at 2 p.m, and he just vetoes into like his 4th best map, and you're, what the fuck? I just spent late my night, I didn't even get any sleep. Like, you know, that the game hasn't even begun, and you've basically already made their coach mild off the face of the earth. So the question I had was this, right? Obviously, if you leave it to pros, unfortunately, they're just going to go pick our best match, quote, just give us that and we'll carry, because they always believe they'll win the game, right? But I want to know what you thought of that, because I do think this is an area where if you can have that versatility, from the coach side alone, you can do so much, right?
Yeah, I think so as well. And like that was somewhere where I felt like we were like mixed, right? We were always bad at one map, which we would ban. And then we would have like one map that we weren't that good at sometimes, which kind of came like that owned us a little bit. But like in a best of 5 scenario, we were incredible. Like I felt like we like with us, if we got into a best of 5 scenario, I felt like we were going to win. I'm not sure if we actually ever lost a best of 5, but I think we won every best of 5 that we played. Maybe that's wrong. I'm not sure. So yeah.
Does that imply the other teams like more heavily focused to the more limited pool?
Yeah. I think so for sure. I think like we had a good understanding of like all the maps, and the thing that kind of wrecked us a little bit is we were always not that good on 2 maps. So if people just picked this one map, like obviously ban and then pick, if people pick that one map, we would like always be a map down. I actually think that's maybe where I should have maybe put at the beginning of this team, I used to just pick like whatever I thought we were like gonna win, and then I would say like going later on, I would listen to the team more in terms of like what they would want to pick. I think maybe I shouldn't have done that sometimes, and I could have like but the thing is, I just want them with this team. I wanted them to feel like confident, and always feel confident. So it's hard to like not fall into that trap. But it's definitely like sometimes where I look to the matchups and I'm like, if we had picked this map, like I think it would be a lot better. But then also going back to that, like I felt like again going to champions, I felt like we were going to be fine against Send on bind, but like sometimes it doesn't translate. I felt like that was a big problem with this team as well. I felt like me and my analysts, I feel like we're one of the best at like anti-stratting teams, and maybe sometimes that didn't like correlate into like, because we don't have an IGL, it's kind of hard to like big out the bigger picture.
Yes.
So that's like where I would love to work with an IGL. I feel like us and FPX are probably the best team at doing that. So yeah, that's sometimes where, and like that kind of came into my mind of like the whole team as well, as like that's where I started like doubting myself of like giving the players more power to kind of pick the maps, because I'm like, I kind of like think back to that Ascend game and I'm like, it just shouldn't have been played like this. Like, so I have to kind of go with their confidence. Like, so sometimes we had most perfect reads, like within 15 seconds we would know where they're ending. Like ends, but for some reason that wouldn't like correlate into the actual game. And like that was like for me, like when we've done like the sickest anti-strat, I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's no way we can lose this game, and then like we'll lose this game. That's when I started like doubting everything. But yeah, the map pools like it's such a big thing. And I actually watching the 100 Thieves video the other day when it was like Sean was talking about how they're just going to get really, like, I liked his approach to it. He said they're just going to have 2 maps, because like obviously they're a new team, so they're just going to have 2 maps. If they ban that other map, we just pick them up, and then we have like one like perma pick that we're always good at, and then we're just like battle and we get like relatively good at these other maps. So I definitely liked his approach of it. And like we were saying with the Carrigan thing, like having the time to do that and having it just means that you're just so incredible. And then when it gets to the later stages of like tournaments, like when it gets to like the best of 5s and stuff like that, they just feel invincible.
You also, Gio, touched on a very relevant point to this as to why it's very dangerous to have a permaban, because you have to understand when they do it, because in CS you used to travel every week, they really never practiced the permaban. It wasn't like they did it sometimes, they just didn't do it in pro play. They would just never play it. So famously, like Alexi B, for example, had just never played the map Vertigo ever in an official game for something mental like 2.5 years or something. So then when he came to a different team and they had to play it, it's like, I mean, good luck, you're just starting today, mate, which is mental. Because here's the problem with doing that, is if the next map released is even worse for you, you've got Sophie's choice, haven't you? Pick your poison now, mate. Because as you're saying, the enemies are just going to wreck you if you don't play either. So you're going to have to pick one of them and you're going to have to start being bad on it. And then the whole thing that you were saying, Sliggy, about when the players don't always get it. Here's the problem. Because a player naturally has to be confident. He has to think he's going to win the game and we're better than them, etc. A player absolutely will just handshake a map. He'll be like, oh, we're like 75% win rate there. So, yeah, good. Then we'll win. But the problem is if you're the coach, you're like, bros, let's just take this one with 55% win rate on, but they're appalling on. Like, you know, like we don't have to be our best. We'll just beat them because they're bad at it. But like, it's hard to get pros to opt in on that one. You know, they're just thinking too bad on the downside. I think of like, oh, I'm gonna look silly. I don't know. It's like, mate, that's how you win. Essentially, you get free games when you do that. That's how you just sort of cheese your way through brackets, innit?
Yeah, literally, essentially that. I think that's one thing that I kind of just should have done more, because there were loads of maps, like I said, like in a best of 5, I felt like we were so confident. There's so many times where like I should have just gone with like my gut more. And again, like just like I'm new to coaching, like for sure. I'm new to coaching. I did like a half a year in CS, like with like easy skins and stuff like that. So I'm very new to it. I'm still learning. So this is like a side where I just have to be like, and like so that's what was great about all of this, is just like I'm like learning. And like even like the Sean thing from that video, I was just like, yeah, that's like so smart. Like I should have like, have I not kind of like taken that on board. So yeah, it's still just a learning process for me. So I'm just kind of just honing the skills, and I think that's good. So that like I I like having a job where I'm learning. That's why I try and switch up what I'm doing like every 5 years, just because I don't like getting too comfortable and being like that. So I like to kind of just do that side of it and just constantly be learning. So it's nice to kind of just learn on the job and do that stuff. But
oh, by the way, I need to correct a statement I made in a past episode. In a past episode, I did tell people, because it's true, if you're just like a normal player or an aimer, like, you're not, don't even come to Valorant now. Like it's actually too late. Like, you know, it's not the beginning of the game. You are not going to switch and tomorrow will be amazing. And if you get a massive contract, spoiler, you've just put yourself sink or swim. Like, if you don't make it the first few months, you're not going to qualify. They'll cut you instantly, and you'll actually now be in a world of hurt, because you're not in CS anymore. You'll be in basically the outskirts of Valorant, and you might not even know if you like the game yet. But I'll tell you what, there is one class of player in line with this convo that I'm going to change that statement. If you're a veteran IGL in CSGO, even if you've never played a lick of Valorant, if they offer you a contract, consider it. And if I'm an org, by the way, consider getting those guys. Like the aforementioned people, the MSLs of the world who are sort of on the outs, mate, they should be I'd be headhunting that guy. As long as he likes the game, he's going to put in the hours. He's going to learn the game. He has these concepts of how you veto, how you do these things, how you set things up. Like, that's mega valuable, I feel like. That's the one role I feel like you should switch over. Because as you say, they'll always be, you're right as well, by the way, in CS it's the same. We're thin on the ground in every TAC FPS, because every kid wants to be the fucking superstar headshot guy. No one wants to be the guy like pulling out the old ring-binded fucking booklet. What a page of man. That's not sexy, is it? That's not the cool thing to do. Yeah. Unless you're not, of course, then it's the coolest shit of all time.
I think
if you're a nerd.
Prime example of that as well, like in Valorant, is like Boaster.
Okay.
I can flame him a little bit because like he comes from the UK scene and we're mates. So like he's like, even in CS, like we used to go to LANs together. Like he would never do like well at them. He's not like
no. He's just an also run, wasn't he?
Yeah, pretty much. He's just like a kind of average UK player, but like his work ethic is just so incredible, and like he has a good mind for it. And he's the kind of guy, and like everyone at the beginning. I'm sorry if you're watching this, mate. Everyone at the beginning was kind of like giving it to him a little bit, just being like he's never gonna like get anywhere, and then. But in this game, keenness is so underrated.
Right.
If you can do all of this new stuff and you can constantly change it up and you have new
when he says keenness, if you're not from the UK, it means like hunger for the game, like sort of like being obsessed with it, right?
Yeah, literally that. Just being a grinder, just being like a no lifer. Like that's kind of like where I want to see myself, and that's kind of what you're seeing with like the guards and stuff. Like I want to build that stuff. I want to.
Right.
I'm good at doing the no life stuff. I can do so many hours. I want a whole team of that. Like I want loads of no lifers, and
that's the title of the episode, by the way. It's like, I want a whole team of no lifers. There you go.
Yeah. That's like that.
There you go.
I think Boaster has also made that fashionable.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like he's a super likable guy. So yeah, I think he's doing good stuff for the game. Like this whole game was, and again, like comparing this in CS, this whole game was great. Like obviously, I see all the NA people are like arguing, like, "Oh, you didn't,
of course,
like it wasn't good for you to like to come over like this cheat, like easy money and stuff." But like for the UK scene that was done, it was incredible for. Like that was like the whole thing.
Yeah, people like artists were never going to be no one in CS, unfortunately, even though they obviously had the skill to it, turns out.
Yeah, exactly. Like we had a whole, that was like a whole thing in Fish 123, like 6 UK guys, including me. Like let's do it. And I felt like we inspired other UK people, and like again, Boaster on his own, just like putting that much effort in and being like, sure, I was literally a nobody in CS, but like look at me now. Like I'm one of the best IGLs. Like it wasn't even an IGL in CS. Like, he's just learning. Oh, he's literally just put in hours and learn it. Like you can do that. Like anyone can do that. If this guy can do it, and it's just all work ethic, then anyone can do it. Like he should be an inspiration to people.
And also the way you know he's mega dedicated is if he can remember all those fucking K-pop dance moves. Like that's hard. I know everyone thinks it's just a meme. That's fucking hard. Like, they're really complicated, all the routine, and he's fucking nailing it. It's not my cup of tea, but whatever. Fair play.
I was going to say, are you speaking from experience?
I've only seen a couple of them, Gio. I haven't been like fucking subscribed or anything. I've seen the odd one. I can't lie as well, though. Listen, that's why.
I was wondering, like, how many dances is Duncan trying to learn at home?
That's where I will say I had my own natural bias against Boaster. Because first of all, I will say, I've said this before as well, I did just initially, like, I follow it as a historian, obviously, so I follow the wikis, basically. I know the results, and I know how teams are doing, and I'm starting to get a sense of, like, oh, is there a team I'm going to watch or whatever? And I would notice, and the problem was, I was looking at the lineups page, and I would be like, mate, Boaster was like a Gfinity Elite series I went to, like, 5 years ago, and he didn't even win the games there. Like, and they're telling me like he's the best captain in the world. Like, oh, all right. And then also I'd just be seeing like all this fucking, obviously all the NA players. It's like, you know this, Sliggy, like the fucking CLG team that was washed about 7 years ago in CS. They were all in this game in like TSM and stuff. I was like, oh, how is this possible? It's just the game banishment. But part of it is like, obviously they have the experience, they know how the team roles work. In this case, by the way, like you're saying as well, the mad underrated part is, because at the beginning of every TAC FPS, people just take the FPS part and just shoot people in the head. If you put in the hours in the books and you just nerd out, mate, you're going to get so many mad advantages. You don't even have to be as good as them. Like, think about how many edges you're going to get.
I think it's like the best game for it. I think it's designed for that, like literally. And
right.
That's like where, like in my tweet again, I'm talking like vision. Like that's my vision.
Oh, that's what you meant. I see. Right.
Yeah, like five dudes that are. And again, I'm not. The work ethic that we put in Liquid was like one of the top. Yeah. You can get in a team. Like I'm not like flaming that at all. But like,
no, you're asking for like the 1%, the exceptional person, the Michael Jordan type character who just practices all the time, right?
Yeah. I just need like just one of them, maybe a couple of them if I'm super lucky. Like that's incredible. So
yes,
yeah. And again, I think this game with like what I said of how fast it changes you have to be keen in this. You're going to see like you become irrelevant really fast.
It sounds like you need to learn Korean and go join a Korean team. We've spoken a lot about like Korean culture on these teams.
I guess it'll have to be DRX, but yeah. It's going to be DRX Sliggy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand, mate, the joke there would be, you wouldn't even have to give that speech. You'd go in and go, guys, I need you to be no-lifers and just practice new stuff 12 hours a day. And they'd be like, so 2 hours less than normal, coach. All right, you're a bit lax, actually, as a coach. Because you know how the fucking rumours are. They're real, by the way. That is how shit goes down there, mate. They are wild. Like, I want to get some of these NA pros. I won't say the names, but I want to get some of the, let's say the big-name NA pros who haven't qualified for a while. I want to take them and fly them over to Korea. And they're probably thinking, because it's like, you know, the teams aren't as good. And just go like, right, we're going to go in and watch an average day of them practicing, and they will think it is the boot camp before Worlds. That's what they will think. Because, mate, in Korea, like, I don't know if people know this, because they're like multi-gaming orgs, you're in like the same building as like the League of Legends squad as the, I mean, they actually have games there, by the way, we don't even play in the West, like Kart Rider and stuff. It's like a pro game. The guy who plays Kart Rider, by the way, practices 14 hours a day, because that is just the expectation. Like, the expectation is you are just going to give your life to this game. So when I see some of the NA pros where they're sort of like, I still want to get my 15k, but like, I'm having to play a little bit too much. Maybe I should be a streamer. It's like, mate, you better be like twice as good as that guy, because he's coming. That guy is coming when they get to the event. We saw it this last tournament, right? I mean, maybe we can talk a little bit about that, Sliggy. Wasn't that wild, especially for someone coming from CSGO? The fact that, like, by the end of the last Masters, every region represented was relevant.
Yeah, I think that's...
in some context.
I think that was, like, part of my... Like, at least for me, it was, like, the proof that I needed to, like, my theory was right. That, like, if I'm looking at, like, the Zeta, the team from Japan, like, they're just so keen. They just put in so much time. And, like, I don't think they're individually as good, like, at aiming as, like straight... like, no offense to them, like, 5 out of 5, like, Liquid against them. I don't believe they are as good. I think they would.
They've also got, you know, it's logical. They've got a lower population size of players than obviously like Europe or something. Yeah, of course.
But like their strategy, their understanding of the game, their reactions, just how fast, the decision making is, because they just watch so much, and like you just saw it. Their whole utility usage, their like crossfires, like everything was just like so good, and like you're seeing it event after event at these big events. They just put in so much time, and you can see the improvement. Like you're literally seeing, because I don't watch those scenes too much. I pretty much stick to just like NA and EU.
Okay.
But like you can literally just see the improvement from these regions, like at event. So you're seeing like 3 months in between, 4 months in between. It's so sick, and it just kind of proves like what I'm saying. Like it is just like I know that these regions put in so much time. Like I know they do. I know they practice crazy amounts. So, I love it. It's so good for the game as well. Like it's crazy good for the game. And I just feel happy that like, I don't know. It's nice that these kind of players, even just like players from regions, even players from like little games, like or like not as known games, or like unknown like players are just coming up just from like their work ethic. I think it's so good for the game, and that's kind of what I'm saying about like you can become irrelevant in this game pretty fast, because you just have to have a crazy work ethic, and yeah, it's hard when the game changes this much to keep up.
Indeed. Right, one last question I have. Normally, if you know my podcast, the other classic thing of mine is, if you've got it on in the background, you're like, is it lagging or something? It's just paused. Like, no, that's the end of the episode. I don't do an outro. Fuck you. But what I'll do is, obviously for this one, I'll ask this question. Do you actually, sounds like, because the problem with your tweet is, right, people didn't know are you initially, even though it sort of vaguely is implied, it's implied you're going to get another team. And as you've talked about here, it's going to be whatever your vision for the game is, and you're going to try a different approach, and you're obviously super motivated to stay in the game, etc. So you're not retiring. Are you still looking for a team as the one in the background? Like, for example, if someone watches this and they're from a top org, and maybe they're even like one of those really big NA orgs that just throw money down the fucking drain and cut people every week, well, give him some fucking money. Do you want to join one? Are you looking for people to reach out to you?
I'm waiting. So I have like again, I do everything in like 5-year plans. That's what I did, observing 5 years, and now I'm doing this. So I'm kind of like a year in properly. I was going to say like 4 more years. So like I do want to win a Champions. I want to win like a Masters and a Champions like back to back. That is like my goal.
You know, the wildest thing is, dude, even though to a gamer that sounds so weird, if you actually say that in the interview with any of these teams, that will go down mega well with American corporate culture. The idea you have a 5-year plan. They will love that, dude. That's their terminology completely.
Oh yeah, for sure. In terms of my future, I'm not entirely sure. I'm still with Liquid. I want to do like some content. Honestly, what I want to do is I want to spend a lot of my time just being ready for when I join another team or another iteration of Liquid, or like I go back in and everyone's changed their like they kind of realize what it's like without me, maybe, or like I'm motivated.
Oh, he's teasing us now, Gio. You see the way he even didn't fully, like, when he closed the door, he put a little wedge underneath to keep it slightly open so you could hear what was going on in there. And if they started to go, coach was right about, oh, hey boys, back. And I'll give you a second chance. I'll tell you what.
So I was just walking
I know, exactly.
to overhear you having some issues.
I love that, though. That shows you're invested in those guys, though, right? Low key, if they just decided this was possible, maybe you could be reunited in the future.
I think, like, so the way that I looked at it is, for this whole team to take a step forward, I had to take a step back, like, for both sides. So it's like the team will improve. All the players will, like, get the motivation from me leaving and all of that stuff. And I think like I couldn't do what I needed to be progressing. Like I didn't feel like I was getting that. So yeah, I'm definitely in my time. I'm going to just make sure that I'm ready to go straight into a team, wherever it may be, and just try and do what I want to do. But I'm going to take my time. Like I'm not, again, like I have the next 4 years planned. I want to make sure that it's right. I don't want to rush into anything. So yeah, I'm probably not going to do anything until like after champs, or maybe like beginning of next year. I'm going to like try and, again, like I'm saying, I'm learning a lot in this role. So I'm going to try and just like learn more and have like better plans coming in of like how I'd like to approach things from the get-go.
This video was kindly supported by Ahmed Hadjou, Matt Pugnatio, Rajcula, Kyle R, Pacy, Travis Goff, ochs, Animosity, Butt Pounder 420, Hades, Jensen Goh, Joseph Ginsburg, Kovacevicd, Tobias Bernasconi, Thooorin, Zoomba, Zyrathenia, and a special thanks always goes up to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to find out who upcoming guests are going to be? Maybe even suggest them on the topic for my content. Maybe you want to appear in one of those lengthy esports discussions with me, or ask me a question for my video AMA. Well, if these perks, or indeed any of the others available, intrigue you, then join the Skrill Illuminati today. Put the money where your mouth is. Where? In the description box below, and the Patreon link.